Hello everyone, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back new fanfic. What if a Naruto fan reincarnated as an Uchiha girl part 1? The first thing she noticed when she came out of her dazed state was darkness. Not just any darkness. It was stagnant, a darkness that had no beginning nor end. Who am I? Where am I? Why am I here? Those thoughts swirled in her mind as she dwelled in the endless darkness until a small light appeared in her mind's eye. Relief and anticipation filled her as the light became brighter and brighter until it engulfed her very being. Blurry images flowed around her with tidal waves of feelings and sensations. The flashes of color became clearer as the images swelled in her head. The bright smile of her mom when they watched musicals together, her dad sternly lecturing her for doodling on the walls, holding her little brother for the first time, happily drawing fan art of her favorite characters. The experience was so overwhelming that she was drowning in them. It was at that moment that she found out who she was, who she loved, and most importantly, what she lost. Diana Baggerly speed walked down the parking lot with a spring in her step, feeling on top of the world. I did it, Mom. I got a job. She cheered into her phone, doing a little dance towards her silver used car with its small scratches and bump on its trunk. That's great, Diana sweet. Honey, did you hear that, Sterling? Your sister got a job. MMHMM. Diana laughed as she got into her car, listening to her mom ramble on to her brother with him only humming in reply, most likely playing video games. What kind of job is it? No, let me guess, you're now a receptionist, right? You have a wonderful voice and is the perfect job for you, her mom drawled excitedly. Diana chuckled nervously as she looked up at her new job's building. A Level Up comic books sign blared at her in bold letters over the entrance of the building, one of its neon letters blinking uncontrollably. It is a wonderful job that fits me perfectly, she chuckled awkwardly, rubbing the back of her head. Oh, okay, Diana sweet. Remember to call your father. He has been asking about you. Mommy loves you. She felt her mood lower at the sound of that. I will, later. I love you too, Mom. Bye. The phone hung up in Diana's hand after an exchange of several exaggerated smooching noises. She sighed while tossing her phone into her cup holder before starting the car. She shook her head and decided to put on some music to lift her spirits. She should be celebrating, not thinking about that man. She hummed, Go, by Flo as she drove towards her college, patting her steering wheel to the beat of the song. Her mind began to drift. I love this song. I wonder if my Naruto manga has arrived. I should check the mailroom before I go to my dorm. Naruto Shippuden, here I come. I hope it is as good as part 1. Diana stopped at a red light. She sighed at her urge to snuggle into her bed to binge read her new manga, curious to know how Naruto grew from the original. If only homework didn't exist, she mourned to herself as she watched the light turn green. With her mind filled with thoughts of her schooling, she didn't notice the truck barreling toward her, the driver's head slumped against the steering wheel. Time seemed to slow, and her life flashed before her eyes. If only she saw it hurtling towards her. If only her airbags deployed on time as the truck slammed into the driver's side. If only she could talk to her family one last time. Maybe she could have stopped this death if only she looked, but there was never time for what ifs when reality struck. The only thing that Diana could do was descend into the blinding light of her memories that engulfed her. Diana tried to reach out for the colorful light that rushed through her only for it to abandon her in the stagnant dark. So I died and everything is gone. Panic began to build as she looked around for even a semblance of anything, shocked to discover that she couldn't move, couldn't feel. I can't even blink. Do I even have eyes? Diana would scream angrily if she could, bawl at the unfairness of her death, but she couldn't because there was nothing in her new world. All she could do was exist. Time seemed more like a lie the longer she stared out into the depthless void. There was no way to tell what's up or down, left or right. Discover more. Book club memberships. Privacy policy templates. Mobile app development. Hell would be better than this. I would at least have something. Pain is better than nothing. Have I been abandoned by God? Diana felt a phantom heartache at the thought. Time seemed to pass endlessly as the answers to her sea of questions only ended in speculations. Mom. Dad. Sterling. I can't stay here. I have to go back. I have to. Go back. Where? Strings of Diana's memories were tugged from her mind, her past slipping right before her. Thoughts jumbled and stretched until it was haze frizzing out into space. Memories drifted into states of indecipherable tenebrosity until whole gaps were only echoes taunting her in the motionless void. This can't be happening. I can't lose myself. I can't become nothing. I must stop it, but how? How? There was a sound that reverberated into the emptiness with unbounded clarity, making the rushing memories stop deteriorating. Ba dump. Why is that so familiar? The pumping continued to ring until it became a consecutive addition to the dark world. Diana's excitement grew. Ah, I know that sound, feeling. Whatever. It is a heartbeat. But whose? Mine. I thought I was dead. But if I am not dead, I must be in a coma. Relief filled her with each pump from her assumed heart, replacing her overwhelming dread. And through hope, a new strength flowed through her. I can't remember what their faces even look like anymore. How am I going to get them back? Okay. Calm down, Diana. What did Mom always say to do whenever I started to lose myself to anxiety? Oh yes, grounding. I have to ground myself. Diana drew her attention toward her pumping heart, feeling the serene happiness coming from it. Now calm, her battle for her lost memories had begun. She willed herself to remember, making memories clear bit by bit. As her family's features became clearer in her mind's eye, she became more aware of her body. She could wiggle her fingers and toes, move her mouth, even felt another tiny heart pumping rapidly inside her. The small beating inside concerned her greatly. This coma dream is getting weirder and weirder. What's with all of these strange sensations? I have two hearts now. I just can't seem to open my eyes no matter how much I try. I just want to see everyone. I am sure Sterling drew on my face with a permanent marker or something. Such a goof. Always pulling jokes at the worst of times. Sterling, I could use one of your jokes right now. Even those really edgy ones. The more she thought of her brother, the sadder she became, bringing other negative thoughts into her mind. This caused Diana to weep, her new heart beating slower than the other. Nothing else seemed to matter as she lost herself to her memories, fearing the worst. She felt small and restricted in the endless dark. I might never wake up. Before she could slip back into a depressed state of mind, a muffled hum stopped her. The more she listened to it, the more it sounded like a melody. Even though the tune was different, the comforting warmth that erupted from within her was familiar. Memories of her being in her mom's arms were as clear as day, her head on her mom's chest as she rubbed her back comfortingly, listening to the sound of her mom's heartbeat as it melted away all worries. All at once, the warmth of her mother's arms became the warmth of the darkness. Nothing about the void felt odd anymore. It felt like she was having a nap in her mom's arms. Not even the odd feeling of being encased in a liquid chamber could deter her from the warmth. This is nice. Being here might not be so bad. I am alive and healing in this coma. It's not like I am brain dead. My family is waiting for me to wake up. If only I could will myself awake like when I forced back my memories. Maybe if I. Diana's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden shift in motion before being sent down a tight passageway. She let out a gasp, tasting the revolting liquid in her mouth. Is this blood? The liquid was blood. This nightmare is getting worse. I can hardly move in this tight space. It hurts. Make it stop. Make it stop. Discover more. Fan merchandise. TV show guides. Fiction book recommendations. Anime streaming service. Comic book subscriptions. Creative writing workshops. Books and literature. Online writing courses. Writing software. Author tools. She continued to be pushed through the contracting path towards an unknown destination for what felt like an eternity. And there was no relief at the end of it. Diana was met with cold air and being in the grasp of an unknown entity. She tried to struggle, but she was at its mercy. It suspended her upside down. Frantic, she let out a high shriek of shock as it smacked her from behind. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Diana was too caught up in her thoughts and pain to hear the frantic voices make a commotion around her. She didn't even notice her change in location until she was prodded with something sharp and engulfed in bright green light. When Diana finally opened her eyes, all she saw was blurry white. Thank God. It really was all a nightmare. Darkness and butt slapping. I must be in the hospital with all this bright light. When I get out of here, I am going to give whoever hit me a piece of my mind. Doctors should be gentle with their patients. She scrunched her face as she tried to blink her blurry vision away before it became a bit clearer. At that moment, she knew something was wrong. That's weird. Did being hit by a truck hurt my vision? I hope the jerk who hit me pays for that too. That or insurance. Do I even have insurance? Diana wondered as she brought her hand up to rub her eyes, only to find it was small and pudgy. She gasped at the hazy sight of it and let out a cry which sounded too much like the sound her brother made when he was only an infant, so high-pitched and screechy. No, no, no. This has to be a dream within a dream. I must be still in a coma. I can't be what I think I am. She tried to lift herself up from her bed only to find herself barely able to move. Diana looked around desperately for a semblance on anything or anyone to help her only to find that she was in a clear tomb. There was a click from her left. Diana moved her eyes toward the sound of a door opening to see a pair of indistinguishable giants rushing towards her, seemingly alerted by her cries. She froze with fear as one of them put their abominably large hand through one of the 4 holes of the dome and placed it gently on her head. Diana shuddered as the mysterious giant woman rubbed her thumb over her forehead, not noticing the comfort that was exuding from it. She was too caught up in the fact that a giant hand was touching her. What is wrong, my child? Are you hungry? The mysterious woman asked, voice motherly kind. Diana stared up at the blurred figure. Is that Japanese? This can't get any worse. I only know a few words and names. She whimpered as she watched the other figure lean itself towards her clear prison. I think that means yes, Mrs. Uchiha. She gave us quite a scare, but your daughter is as strong as the rest of your clan. Soon, she will be right as rain. I am sure of it. Dr. Sato will come back with her results in an hour or so. The other blurred figure chirped before leaving the room. Diana tried her best to understand the foreign conversation, eyes widening at one distinct name that she heard in her favorite anime many times. She squinted as the eerily sweet figure with the bottle now in hand swiftly leaned herself down before Diana and gently shoved the bottle in her toothless mouth. Diana tearfully struggled to get the bottle out until her instincts took over and made her drink the formula desperately for its nutrition. She couldn't deny the thoughts she tried so hard to dismiss at that moment. I'm a baby and this woman feeding must be the one who birthed me. What's worse is her name is Uchiha. No, this can't be happening. This can't be real. Diana blinked a few times as her instincts insisted that she continued to drink from the surprise bottle of formula. As the bottle emptied, her thoughts about her rebirth continued. An Uchiha? Nah, I read too many reincarnation novels. It would be just as likely that I have reincarnated into a Japanese family more obsessed with Naruto than I am. Either way, I'm still a baby. Her eyes glistened at the thought. If I really reincarnated into Japan, I can find my family in America when I am older. It can't be too hard. My parents' house has been in the family for generations. I just need to study hard and become an exchange student. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. This made Diana suck on the bottle with a newfound vigor that made Mrs. Uchiha chuckle above her. Drink up, my little one. Drink up and become strong and healthy. Diana wished that she watched more subbed anime instead of dubbed as she listened to the woman's incoherent chatter. This is beyond humiliating. Diana thought as a figure, who she considered to be a nurse, changed her diaper for the 5th time that day. She squinted at the figure before letting out a hoarse sigh, still feeling the strain from her last instinctual screech fest. The only good thing about today is that I am no longer in that dome thing and have that sticky breathing tube out of my nose. If only it was the same with that sharp IV. Her thoughts were interrupted by the opening of her door, knowing that it was the so-called Uchiha. She was the only one who visited her, after all. Diana expected to have her just talk to the nurse, maybe rub her head, and feed her before leaving like always. What she didn't expect was for her to swiftly wrap her slender hands under her and lift her into her arms. No, put me down, Diana shouted in her mind as she flailed in the blurry figure's arm, letting out a whine. Mrs. Uchiha only let out a chuckle as she snuggled Diana close to her, putting her head over her heart. Its effect was almost immediate. The feeling of love and safety flowed through Diana like a warm stream. As she listened to her the woman's heartbeat, she felt a serene nostalgia. She couldn't help but smile. You are going to meet your father and brother soon, Mrs. Uchiha told Diana as she rocked her ever so slowly. She wearily yawned in reply, feeling her eyes become more and more droopy. It took her no time to fall asleep. A few hours later, Diana awoke to the feeling of someone poking her cheek. Her dazed eyes opened to see the shape of a little boy looking down at her. She made an exaggerated frown at him before flailing her sloppy limbs, making mopey sounds as she went. Come here you. You're worse than my brother. Sterling. She stopped flailing and felt tears coming to her eyes at the images that popped into her head. Diana's antics made her new brother lightly chuckle and her mother make shushing noises while rocking her gently. A deep chuckle was heard somewhere off to the side before her body was met with a pair of large calloused hands. She looked up at the owner of the hands to see a blurry man lifting her up in the air, the faint smell of ash filling her nose. His very presence made her freeze and stare at him with watery eyes. His stern demeanor reminded her of her father, a wicked man indeed. She hoped that he would be better. Have you given her a name? The man, who she assumed to be Mrs. Uchiha's husband, asked as he pulled Diana close to his chest. Humiya, the obscure woman replied happily. Humiya Uchiha. Humiya, the giant man repeated wistfully. The perfect name for a healthy baby girl. Diana snuggled into the warmth of who she assumed to be Mr. Uchiha's chest at the comforting tone of the man's voice and watched as he went towards the window. She listened to the bustling outside, wishing that she could see her old family with a pang in her chest. But that wasn't the only pain there. Another wave came that was so great that she let out a desperate gasp, her eyes wide and teary. What's happening? It hurts. I can't breathe. Mr. Uchiha was frantic as he watched his daughter go from calmly snuggling into him to a weeping mess. He tried to rock her to calm her down, but Diana continued to struggle, her face turning tomato red. Fugaku. What happened? Mrs. Uchiha cried, surprised by the outburst. I wish I knew, Makoto, Fugaku voiced before handing Diana back to Makoto, who began checking her newborn to see what was wrong. I am going to get the doctor. Itachi, stay with your mother and sister. Itachi nodded numbly as he watched his father leave the room before looking at his crying sister and worried mother. The moment Fugaku came back into the room with the doctor, she barfed all over herself and Makoto. The doctor immediately went over to Diana, who had the blanket soiled with vomit taken off of her. The medical professional's hand began to glow green before gliding his hand onto her abdomen to examine her vitals. The moment the doctor's hand touched Diana, she gave one final painful screech before falling deep into unconsciousness, wishing that she could just go back to being Diana Baggerly. Diana felt completely drained the next time she woke up or when she thought she woke up. She found herself not as a premature baby in a hospital but herself in a bright endless space with lights like stars soaring through the night. The woman looked down at her already standing self, wearing what she wore before she died. I'm me. Diana began to touch her face and body with glee. Who are you, Anomaly? A feminine voice echoed, calm but stern. Diana froze mid-motion and quickly looked up with surprise. Standing across from her was a woman with hair darker than the stagnant darkness and skin white as death, seemingly staring daggers at her despite her eyes being closed. Diana immediately looked away when she noticed the mysterious woman's lack of shame. The only thing covering her was her flowing hair draped over her chest which flowed down like a smoky fog. What do you mean, Anomaly? Who are you? Diana spluttered, trembling at the woman's intimidating presence. Don't play dumb, Anomaly, the woman warned, stepping closer with her pale finger pointing accusingly at her. You are not from me. You are not one of my children. I cannot let something not from me be born into the Uchiha clan. Diana didn't reply, her throat too tight for her to speak. Uchiha clan. The one in Naruto. I couldn't have reincarnated there. This has to be a dream. Before she could sort out her thoughts, the woman's hot hand gripped her chin and pulled her to face her her fiery breath making her skin burn. Please don't hurt me, Diana begged in shock, her plans to reunite with her family shattering the more she stared at the intimidating woman's face. The woman let go of Diana's chin, seemingly caught off guard from her reaction. Oh, looks like I have misjudged. The woman grieved, watching Diana as her trembling legs gave out from under her. Instead of one of those demons, I have found a lost soul at the brink of death. The woman's wretched face morphed into a look of pity, her voice sickly sweet, so much pain I feel in you. No wonder you are as skewed as a demon. The blessing of oblivion wasn't given to you. Poor little thing. Diana looked up to her at that, tears starting to fall from her eyes. She feared the small smile that creased across the woman's youthful face. She feared it more than anything. But do not fret, small anomaly. For I, Naka, will set things right by giving you the blessing of oblivion. You will soon join the many souls in their endless cycle of life and death. Now be cleansed of your sorrows, my anomaly. Naka gently placing her hand down on the sparkling floor. Diana tried her best to scoot away but was unable to move. Black fire sprung forth from Naka's hand and wrapped itself around Diana's ankles. She gasped, frightened by the cold flame dragging her toward the fiery portal. But I don't want to start anew. I want to go back home to my world. I know I don't belong here. You're an all-powerful being. You can take me back, right? Please send me back to my family instead of this. Diana cried while pushing herself back in vain. Naka tilted her head. That is impossible. Wherever you came from is out of my jurisdiction. Souls can only move forward. Forget your old cycle and welcome your new one, Naka simply stated. Diana flailed desperately and begged harder as her feet began to get absorbed by the portal. No, please. Don't do this. Don't make me forget, she pleaded before wrapping her arms around Naka for dear life. Naka stared at Diana's frantic shrieks with a look of confusion. Why are you resisting oblivion? Doesn't everyone want to end their suffering and cure your battered soul? It would be like it never existed and you will be at peace in your next life. But it did exist. Diana wailed. My family exists. They loved me as much as I loved them. I know my family is suffering because I am gone and I am suffering because I was forced to leave them. This is the only connection that I have to them. Her arms trembled from the strain of flinging against oblivion. Please, it's all I have left. Diana's grip slipped and she felt become torso deep in oblivion. She stared into the goddess's one eye in horror. So just send me back to my baby form instead of this. I'll learn how to be an Uchiha, but I will always be Diana Baggerly, she said with as much strength as she could muster. Naka frowned and thought about it for a second before swiftly pulling Diana out of the portal she made. Diana felt as if oblivion drained the strength from her as she stared at her impending doom, completely helpless. What an interesting little soul. I will respect your choice, Naka announced, it being almost a whisper. But I want you to help me in return. That will be your price. My price? Yes, your price. Naka beckoned, eyes opened wide. Diana held back a scream as she was forced to stare into Naka's empty sockets, tears of blood flowing down onto the starry ground. I lost my eyes in the land of the living. Find them or your memories will consume you and your soul's cycle will end. Once a soul's cycle stops, it can never continue. You would be lost forever and will become one with the clay. Diana gulped before nodding, knowing that this was the only way to keep her family close. And my life after this one. Naka lifted her arms up and shook her head. Who knows? With a soul like yours, anything is possible. But know this. The woman caressed Diana's cheeks and forced her to face her. That a goddess always keeps her promises, and I promise you that whatever happens to you onward, you will remember it as long as you find my eyes. Naka took a deep breath and blew smoke into Diana's face, making her vision hazy. Wait. Diana coughed. What do I do with your eyes once I find them? Naka grimaced. Once you find them, bring them to my home and burn them as an offering to me in my altar. Don't let this be a lifelong journey, Naka echoed before Diana lost consciousness. And with that, Humia's life truly began. The moment Humia opened her dull eyes, her body felt weighed down and limp. They're gone, really gone, and I'm in Naruto. All of her strength seemingly disintegrated as the memories of her past life echoed in her mind with full clarity. Every family meal, every all-nighter, every episode, all were as clear as day. She felt weightlessly heavy due to the pressure of her lifetime deal, and there was nothing she could do about it. Her reality was sealed. It came to the point that not much mattered outside of her. Not even the sharp needle inside her arm or tube stuck up her nose made much of a difference. The initial fear of not being in control of her extremities long dissipated. She stared at the foggy figure of Makoto who hovered over her, rubbing her forehead as usual. We have done all we can to keep her stable since her relapse, Mrs. Uchiha. After giving her a full check-up on her vitals, we found that she is extremely hypersensitive to chakra and has heart defects, the doctor told Makoto as he continued to write notes. He flipped his notebook closed and looked up at Makoto. A baby with hypersensitivity is very rare. Especially one being born prematurely with heart defects. But that isn't even the worst of it. Makoto simply nodded in reply, blinking unshed tears as she turned back to watch Humiya's chest move up and down with each breath. Mrs. Uchiha, her brain is overdeveloped, the doctor said grimly. Makoto looked the doctor in the eyes. Overdeveloped? Should it not be good news? Makoto's voice heightening with each breath. The doctor gulped, his stance showing how uncomfortable he was. I am afraid not. An overdeveloped brain doesn't mean Humiya has any type of cognitive advantages. Premature babies with overdeveloped brains are more susceptible to developmental delays and learning disabilities. Due to her heart defects, she is even more likely to have these setbacks. Are you telling me that my child is inept? Makoto snared, her Sharingan blazing red. How dare you accuse my child of having disabilities? Humiya's eyes watered at the sudden shouts of Makoto, making her let out a whimper. Dr. Sato flinched but held his ground. Shish. I didn't mean to startle you. Makoto hushed, her trembling hand stroking her forehead. Your child's defects have no cure and will affect her for the rest of her life. We can only lessen the pain she will be in. Get out, Makoto ordered the doctor. Not wanting to listen to any more, I said leave. The doctor calmly bowed before doing just that. Humiya stared up at Makoto, watching as the woman blinked away a few tears and placed a finger on Humiya's open palm. Humiya gaped as her guardian's tears dropped onto her cheeks. With a heavy heart, Humiya gave a comforting coo as she wrapped her hands around Makoto's finger. There. It's okay, Humiya. Mama is here. Mama loves you. Mama will never leave you, Makoto whispered, rubbing her thumb over her fingers. So rough. Humiya leaned into her guardian's hand, feeling a pang in her heart. Mama, can I really call her that? You are not inept. You can't be, Makoto sobbed. You would die if you are. Humiya watched in shock as her guardian fell to her knees, covering her mouth to muffle her weeping. Makoto then shakily reached down into her pocket and took out a necklace of obsidian glass beads with a blood-red charm shaped like a lotus on its black tassel. She brought the beads close to her lips, almost as if to kiss it. Hail great Naka, bringer of life. Please hear my cries, merciful mother. Naka, nurturer of Uchiha's fire, I beseech thee. Bring light to Humiya's life. Please save my child's mind. Makoto wept, saying the phrase over and over again for every bead on her charm, her quivering voice becoming slow and precise with each reading, going deep into a trance. Humiya's heart ached every time that name was worshipped, wishing that she understood what was being said. Suddenly, the temperature in the room began to increase. All is well. Mother is always there when her children call to give comfort, a familiar voice beckoned from a distance. Humiya's heart stopped when she heard that familiar voice and understood it. She whimpered as she watched Naka appear out of a stream of light coming from the window and wrap her pale arms around an unbeknownst Makoto, giving her a comforting back hug, looking more like a mist hazing through her than around her. Dear child, forgive me. For I am unable to fix anything that ails you in the realm of Yang. The goddess looked up at Humiya with her droopy closed eyes and frowned. No wonder you were at the brink. Didn't your world have any natural energy? Chakra. Humiya bit her lip with her gums. Naka got up and put a warm hand on Humiya's stomach, making Humiya wince. Oh dear, she muttered as she drew her hand away. Your foreign soul is not adjusting to your new body well. What makes it worse is your sorrowful heart. Thankfully, your mind is intact and will not be in need of saving. A sorrowful heart? Humiya asked, not liking the expression on Naka's face. Yes. Emotional distress can cause harm to the body, disrupt chakra. You must have mourned greatly for your loved ones in the womb as your heart was being developed. It struggles as much as you turmoil, Naka explained with a tut-tut. There isn't much that I can do about your heart. You already took a lot out of me when I attempted to give you salvation. Humiya couldn't hide her frown. At this point, she wondered if her life would ever have a semblance of good in it. It is not like I can control my emotions. My death was a tragedy. I didn't want to die. I didn't even know that I was in a womb until I was born. She whined. Her cries made Makoto pray harder. Most deaths are tragedies, my child. No mortal really knows when they are going to die, Naka consoled while caressing Humiya's cheek. I can't heal your physical body, but I can heal your spiritual connection, Naka said before giving Humiya's left ankle a soft peck. I give you my blessing, child. Welcome to the family. The weight that Humiya didn't even know was on her chest lifted, her limbs not as sluggish. She couldn't help but coo with relief. Little did she know that the spot where Naka kissed formed a deep brown lotus-shaped birthmark. Makoto was on her last bead. My work here is done, Naka signed, tired. Remember our deal. You may not see nor hear me, but I will be with you. Remember our deal, the goddess said before giving Humiya a poke on the forehead. And with that, Naka dispersed into a stream of light, leaving a warm comforting breeze. Humiya watched her leave, feeling better than she had ever been. She stared at the spot where Naka was before, contemplating her relationship with the goddess. I really hope it won't be too difficult. Makoto ended her prayer and opened her eyes. She smiled wearily at Humiya. I always feel warm after I pray. Maybe she would finally answer. Makoto kissed Humiya on her forehead and looked down at her over-caught sight of the birthmark, making her gasp with relief. The Great Mother answered, Humiya. You will live, Makoto beamed, smile brighter than the red in her eyes. Days began to blur as Humiya lay trapped in her dull white hospital room, constantly dealing with the prodding doctors and nurses. She slept most of the time, waking up during odd times of the day. The only thing that Humiya looked forward to was when Makoto came to visit her. She basked in Makoto's warmth and felt complete security in her arms. But today felt different. Humiya flinched as the doctor took the IV out of her arm. Isn't this great, Dr. Sato? Little Humiya is being discharged already. Dr. Sato hummed drearily as he wrote some notes on his clipboard. Yes, she has been stable for a week. Her mother and brother will be here in less than an hour. Make sure she is presentable, Akatsuki, he said to the nurse before promptly leaving. Yes, sir. Akatsuki cheered, hot pink eyes sparkling as she followed the doctor out. That was quicker than usual. Thank goodness. Humiya sighed with relief. Sadly, her moment of solace was short-lived. A few moments later, the nurse came back with a basket of bathing supplies and clean clothes. Humiya cringed at the fire in the nurse's eyes. I am going to make you look fabulous. Akatsuki cackled as she picked Humiya up from her crib into the sink, handling her more like a doll than a baby. She turned on the sink and filled it with warm water and soap before dunking Humiya into the warm soapy water. Shouldn't nurses handle babies gentler? Humiya sneezed from the strong flowery smell coming from the soap, making Akatsuki chuckle as she scrubbed. She blew strands of her dirty blonde hair out her face as she cleaned her. After the nurse cleaned Humiya, she clothed her in a pink dress and skillfully wrapped her in a thick pink blanket like a gift. Lastly, she tied a bright red bow on the top of her head, completing her present-like image. This is horrible. It's as if I am tied up with rope. Humiya struggled to get her hands out of the tightly bound blanket as the nurse walked out of the hospital room and down the long hallway. The moment she finally got her hands free, they arrived at their destination. Akatsuki gave the door a jubilant knock. Come in, the doctor called from the other side. Humiya looked curiously around the office as the nurse entered with her, happy that her vision had become clearer. The office was simple and plain. It had a desk, a few chairs, and a small bookshelf. The only thing that gave the room any color was the small wilted plant on the desk, pitifully curled inward with its brown spots. Dr. Sato sat at his desk with a placid smile on his face while Makoto and Itachi occupied the two chairs across from him. Humiya and Itachi's eyes, making her heart drop. The one who is going to kill me in a few years. She continued to stare at him, noting how his eyes reminded her of a worried kitten, wide and teary. Humiya sighed. He is what? 3. I have time. Maybe if I be his sweet little sister, he might spare me. Makoto elegantly got up from where she was sitting the moment she locked eyes with Humiya and walked over to the nurse. Akatsuki excitedly handed Humiya to Makoto, who accepted the sling with a satisfied smile. Itachi silently watched his mom interact with his new sister, curious. It's time to go, Humiya. Makoto hummed before beckoning Itachi to hold her hand. Humiya watched as little Itachi numbly placed his hand onto Makoto's open palm. Remember to contact me if any problems occur, and her prescription will soon be available soon, Dr. Sato said before giving them a bow. Makoto and Itachi hastily mirrored his bow before walking out the door. The streets of Konoha bustled as the trio went down them, birds chirping in the afternoon sun and citizens chatting amongst themselves. The uniquely shaped buildings towered over them with their colorful roofs. Humiya watched the different types of people walk past them. Some of them looked normal with their black or blonde hair, while others contrasted with hair colors that looked like they came from a rainbow. Does hair dye exist in this world? Humiya carelessly wondered as she was carried down the dusty dirt roads. She watched in amazement as she saw ninjas in different uniforms jump through the village from rooftop to rooftop. Itachi stared up at his mother and Humiya as they walked in silence, his dark eyes reflecting his mind going a mile a minute. Mom, Humiya will get better, right? Itachi asked hesitantly. Makoto stopped abruptly at her son's innocent question, unconsciously clutching her new bundle of life in her son's hand, time seemingly coming to a standstill. Itachi, your sister was born early and has many problems because of it. Humiya will have to live with them for the rest of her life, she stated before turning to her son and kneeling down to his eye level. She put her hand on his shoulder and gave Itachi a strained smile. That is why we will all look after little Humiya and give her our support. It is going to take a little longer for her to understand things, and many will look down on her because of it, Makoto said as she caressed Humiya's cheek. Humiya looked at Makoto and Itachi when she felt her guardian's warm hand. Good big brothers take care of their siblings and are patient with them. You are a good big brother, right? Makoto asked kindly. Itachi looked at Humiya as she gave a long yawn. Yes, he replied softly with a nod. Great. Makoto cooed before rubbing Itachi's head affectionately. She then got up and continued towards the Uchiha district, holding Itachi's hand as she went. Humiya dozed off while they walked, not minding the autumn air biting at her cheeks. The Uchiha district was like a village within a village, crowds of clan members walking about. It was hard to tell them apart from afar with the little variation in their appearances. Many of them were civilians going about their day and making their products to sell to each other and to buy things from. The clan symbol littered the signs and buildings. The Uchiha love their symbol as much as Americans love their flags. Humiya mused after she woke up from her dozing. She looked around the district in awe at how different it looked from the rest of the village. The many buildings were 1 or 2 stories with tile roofs that curved upward. Makoto and Itachi walked past the shops, giving the occasional wave to clansmen who gave passing greetings. They stopped near a large traditional-style house at the edge of the district. Humiya squinted her eyes when she saw a figure already standing in front of their house, twirling a red floral parasol. Grandmother? Makoto asked as she walked closer, surprised at the unexpected visit. The woman turned around and smiled proudly at the trio, her eyes like a fox. She didn't look anything like a grandmother in her red kimono that was covered in elegant lotus designs and pastel pink obi that has the clan symbol on the back of it. The only thing signaling that she was an older woman was her graying hair. The white makeup she wore effortlessly covered the little wrinkles that she had and contrasted with her deep red lips and red lotus painted on her forehead. Grandmother. She looks like Makoto's older sister. Humiya smiled a toothless smile at the thought. This means that I have good genes. Hi Obasan, Itachi light greeted with a bow. Hi Obasan chuckled at Itachi's formal greeting behind her sleeve. She then went and quickly pinched his cheek, nails painted red and immaculate. Little Itachi, you are the most respectful toddler I have ever met, Hi Obasan cooed before letting go and looking up at Makoto. You taught your child well, dearie. Itachi puffed out his cheek in a pout as he rubbed the spot where the older woman pinched it and hid behind Makoto's plain black skirt. Itachi's pouting face and antics were so expressive that Humiya couldn't help but start laughing. It felt like the first time in a lifetime. Makoto beamed down at Humiya as she continued to laugh and motioned everyone inside. What kind of tea would you like, grandmother? Makoto asked as she took her sandals off and put them away with Itachi hastily copying her before scurrying upstairs. Green tea is fine, Hi Obasan replied as she gracefully slipped off her sandals and closed her parasol. She sighed as she watched Itachi go. Little Itachi is always like this when he gets the chance. Running away from his poor old great-grandmother. I still can't believe that I have lived to see the day. 2 great shinobi wars and I am still here. That is because you are a priestess, Makoto replied simply. Head priestess and a clan elder now too. Not that it really means anything other than celebrating us being old and senile, which I am far from, mind you. Very far from, Hi Obasan retorted as she situated herself down at the table in the dining room in Caesar position, and war touches everyone. Destruction in the hopes of prosperity. Peace is only the absence of war. I wouldn't be surprised if we are secretly preparing for another one. Especially with those who are in power now. Power-hungry swine, the lot of them. Quote. Grandmother. I am right. Now, hand me our new edition, so I can get a good look at her. I'm not getting any younger. Hi Obasan chirped, hands open and ready. Makoto handed Humiya to her great-grandmother with an exasperated sigh before beginning to prepare the tea. Hi Obasan immediately unraveled her from her blanket to reveal the lotus-shaped birthmark on her left ankle. Hey, let go. Why are her hands so calloused? Humiya wondered as Hi Obasan rubbed the mark. Her whole being screams pampered noblewoman. Humiya kicked her leg from her great-grandmother's grasp with a frown when the constant rubbing became too much. I can assure you that Humiya's birthmark is real, Makoto stated as she dug into her cabinet. I had to make sure. Makoto's grandmother huffed. You haven't been the most honest child in the past. Remember when you poisoned your teammates with one of my husband's concoctions, dearie? Makoto sharply turned toward her grandmother, eyebrow twitching. Grandmother, I was only 12. I mistook grandfather's medicine with his lotus sake. It was not my fault that they downed it so quickly and got alcohol poisoning. We have been over this, she argued with a pout and a hand on her hip. Humiya mirrored her pout as she watched Hi Obasan let out a hearty laugh, revealing the gaps in her mouth from her missing teeth. And you were not able to take the Chunin exams that year and those boys were too sick to care. Thank goodness I count them every day. Little rascals, the lot of you. Hi Obasan sighed, wiping a tear before she noticed Humiya's expression. In response to Humiya's pout, Hi Obasan pinched her cheek which made her cry out. That was uncalled for. She whimpered and tried to wrap her tiny fingers around Hi Obasan's grip to pull her away from her throbbing cheek, making the old woman laugh some more. Well, would you look at that? Humiya has a temper. Even with her frail body, her sharp eyes tell me that she is going to go far in life, she resolved before she took her hand off of Humiya's cheek. Humiya put her hand over her now red cheek and reached out for Makoto with her other hand. Get me out of this mean old hag's arms. I beg you. You should stop patronizing my children, grandmother. There is a reason why most of the children avoid your hands, Makoto muttered as she put the tea and a bowl of senbei crackers on the table before taking Humiya back into her arms. Humiya sighed with relief as Makoto tucked her back into her pink blanket. Safe at last. Ha! Children's cheeks are so soft that they are meant to be pinched. You will be doing it too when you are my age, Hi Obasan teased, making a pinching motion with her hand. Makoto rolled her eyes with a small smile. Anyways, how is the shrine? She asked. This made Hi Obasan's smile fade into a frown. Still standing, if that is what you are wondering. Hardly anyone goes there to pray to Naka and give her offerings anymore. If I were her, I would slap some sense into them, but Naka wouldn't like it. The will of fire seems to be more important these days, Hyoba-san replied before taking a sip of her tea and putting her hand on her chin. It is what keeps the village going. It was what kept me going when I was a jonin, Makoto supplied as she sipped her tea. But it isn't everything, Hyoba-san insisted, leaning forward on the table before snatching a cracker from the bowl and taking a bite out of it. This village is small in the grand scheme of things, barely even 100 years old. I was still training to be a shrine maiden when the village was being built. Love is important and so is family, but the village isn't our family. The clan is. If the village ever saw us like family, they wouldn't be keeping us at such a distance, Hyoba-san ranted before taking another bite. Before she could continue her rigmaroles, Makoto perked up at the sound of the front door opening, making Hyoba-san look back. Humiya looked towards the door as well. I'm home, Fugaku called. Hyoba-san drank the rest of her tea and stink-eyed the clock while Makoto jumped up and scurried to the door. Welcome home, she said brightly when Fugaku came into view. Humiya looked up at Fugaku and noticed a small smile form on his face. He then frowned and looked around. Where is Itachi? My grandmother is here, Makoto told him. Ah, he replied. Is she staying for dinner? I was just leaving, Hyoba-san interjected, walking past the pair and towards the door. It is time for me to return to the shrine. I can't keep it in the hands of the maidens for long. It was so nice talking to you, dearie. Hyoba-san said fondly with a bow before putting in her shoes and grabbing her parasol. Makoto and Fugaku gave a respectful bow back. Remember to visit, she said offhandedly as she closed the door behind her. Good riddance. Face pincher. Humiya thought as she watched Hyoba-san go with a pout. She turned to her Fugaku and noticed the small smile back on his face and watched as his rough hand scooped her up from Makoto's arms and up into the air. Humiya felt exhilaration stir within her as she was lifted up into the air, making her let out a squeal. I am so glad that Humiya is home, Fugaku stated as he brought the giggling Humiya to his chest. Makoto nodded, her face shifting from her usual placid smile to a slight frown. Yes, but she isn't better, she replied, crossing her arms over her torso. Fugaku knit his brows before taking a step closer to his wife. Not better. Then why did they release her? Before Makoto could answer, Humiya let out a whimper due to her stomach growling. Ah, she's hungry. I'll tell you more about it after I feed her and put her in her crib, she whispered. Makoto opened her arms and scooped Humiya from Fugaku's and laid Humiya's head on her shoulder while she walked up the stairs. Humiya couldn't get Fugaku's concerned expression out of her head as she was carried away. The eventful day of coming to her new home ended with a seemingly quiet night. Konoha nightlife bristles outside her open window, people passing by through wisps of small flames, some larger than others. Humiya closed her eyes and wondered if there would ever be pure darkness. She sensed faint pulses everywhere, warm currents sweeping past from moving flames. The constant stimulus oddly didn't pain her at all. In truth, it made her feel more real, more connected. This feels nice, like I'll never be in that dark void ever again. Humiya mused as she watched the world wrap her in a glittery blanket of energy. She snuggled herself into her new crib with a sigh, the soft cream cushion sinking against her small frame. It was made of a warm brown wood which color fit perfectly with her cream-colored walls surrounded by deep brown beams. Humiya took a deep breath as she was lulled by the glittery ambiance. I could get used to this. But before she was consumed by blissful sleep, a heinous stench filled her nostrils. Shame overcame Humiya as she felt the liquid warmth spread across her nether regions. I wet myself again. Disgusting. She lamented as she opened her eyes wide, the sense of dread overwhelming her. Humiya struggled in her soiled mess as the gravity of her situation finally twisted into the forefront of her mind, making the reeking mess of her filled diaper worse. Who am I kidding? How could I have thought anything good is going to come out of this? Especially with who my family is. How could I not think of the tragedy that awaits me? Can I really make Itachi love me enough to spare me? At this rate, I am not going to survive my second puberty. How am I even going to complete my end of the deal when Massacre is going to kill me before my new life even begins? Tears fell from her eyes as she let out a wail, covering her face with her pudgy hands as she wept at her situation. So many people are going to be killed by Itachi. How can I save anyone when I don't even know how to save myself? Without warning, the door to her room slid open. Humiya flinched at the sudden noise, her eyes like saucers when she moved her hands down to see a disgruntled Fugaku enter the room. His bags and creases under his eyes looked more pronounced against the light that flowed into the room from the bright hallway, his eyebrows scrunched together as he hastily walked toward her. He was no longer in his work uniform. Instead, he wore a deep green kimono that was white at the hem with gray pants. Don't look at me like that. What happened to your concern for me the last time I saw you? She sniffed before coughing at the disgusting fumes her diaper emitted. I am here, so calm down. Do not cry yourself sick again, Fugaku grumbled, face morphing into a sneer at the smell. Humiya felt tears return to her eyes as she gazed at Fugaku's sour expression. You think I am nothing but a burden, don't you? Huh, well, it is not my fault I can't move. You are just like my father. And you have done much worse. You raised a monster. A monster who is going to kill us all if I don't do something. She watched as he lowered the wooden side of the crib and took out a clean cloth diaper and other supplies. Her face turned red as Fugaku turned her legs and began the process of changing her, his careful hands quickly unraveling the soiled cloth off of her. Humiya couldn't help but sob as he changed her with the skillful hand of someone who changed diapers hundreds of times. Fugaku let out a sigh of relief after he flung the dirty diaper into the waste bin and put away the other materials. She didn't even notice that her guardian was done changing her until he picked her up. Shish, Humiya, it is all right. You are clean now, Fugaku stated as he put her head on his shoulder. Humiya didn't even try to understand what he said, she was too caught up in the feeling of being violated. I don't want to get used to this. I am an adult. You hear me? An adult. I can't do this. I can't be like this anymore. She only cried harder as she began her inner rampage, beating her small fists against Fugaku's shoulder as she screamed. Fugaku began to pace around the room, rubbing Humiya's back as she continued her fit. What am I going to do with you? With lungs like yours, anyone would think you are as healthy as any other baby, he grumbled with a humorless laugh, swaying as he walked back and forth. The gall of people. To say to my wife's face that you are intellectually stunted before you even said your first word. First the rumors of another war and now this. Will I ever catch a break? Father. A voice called. Is Humiya alright? Fugaku turned his head to see Itachi peeking his small head into the room, eyes wide and reflecting the concern in his voice. Yes. She is fine, he told his son simply, not missing a beat in his swaying pacing. But, she sounds really hurt, Itachi fretted as he gripped the doorway. I know Humiya does, but the smallest things can set a baby off. And sometimes babies just cry because they need to cry. You were like this too when we first brought you home from the hospital. I was, Itachi asked, walking into the room towards his father and grabbed his leg. Yes, you were. The moment Makoto brought you into this house, you cried for hours. New scents and surrounds can be overwhelming for a newborn, Fugaku said, using the hand that he was rubbing Humiya's back with to shuffle Itachi's hair. Okay. Itachi replied with a small smile, putting his hand on his head. He looked over at the still screeching Humiya. Do you think a pacifier would help her calm down? That new trinket. I almost forgot about that thing. They were around when you were a baby. We made you suck on cow bones and cloth soaked in milk. Now, where is it? Fugaku began to go through the bag under Humiya's crib before taking a pink rubber one out. Humiya's eyes opened wide with shock the moment Fugaku popped it into her mouth and cursed herself as she gave in to the impulse to suck the pacifier. She turned her head to see Fugaku's relieved expression and Itachi's bright smile. Humiya stopped crying. Itachi cheered, grabbing Fugaku's sleeve before going on his toes to have a closer look at his sister. Humiya stared back at Itachi's bright black eyes, confused. When did he get in here? And why does he look so happy? She flinched as Fugaku gently wiped her tear-stricken face with his sleeve. MMHMM, Fugaku replied as he kneeled down so that Itachi could get a better look at his sister. Once Fugaku was down to Itachi's level, Itachi hesitantly rubbed Humia's head, making her brow knit together as he continued to touch her. Time for bed, Fugaku ordered a few moments later, lifting himself up as he did. Ah, Itachi voiced quietly, clutching the bottom hem of his shirt. Now or I will not help you train tomorrow, Fugaku commanded more sternly, making Itachi's eyes widen before scurrying out of the room. He watched as his son left the room, his stern sneer slowly shifting into a grave frown. So innocent. If a war does happen, I am going to have to beat that out of him, he sighed to himself before looking down at a frowning Humia. You didn't have to yell at him, you know. By far, you are the worst father ever. You neglect Sasuke when he is born and the massacre was your fault. You must have done something wrong to cause Itachi to become a ruthless murderer. Humia's mind went blank when she noticed Fugaku blink back tears, but one quickly escaped despite his efforts, making him quickly wipe it away before clearing his throat. He turned his head to the open window and gazed at the full moon now high in the sky. I will beat it out of both of you, starting with Itachi, he faltered, almost at a loss. Was that a tear? But Fugaku never cried in the entire manga. Why now of all times? Why now? The answer to her endless string of questions eluded as Fugaku lightly stroked Humia's nose with a finger and swayed her into restless dreams. One word that Humia described herself as during the coming months was determined. Nothing like a good cry to lift the spirits. Days turned to weeks, and weeks turned months, but the likes of time didn't deter her from her goal. Just like that, more than a year had passed. Most of her days were met by her helplessly doing sloppy arm and leg exercises in her crib or assessing the flames she sees when she closes her eyes. On rare occasions, Makoto would take her out to the hospital. She hated the hospital days, having to be poked and prodded to check something that she knew little about. But that didn't make her lose confidence either, for the first step she strove for was a simple one. Today's the day, Humia cheered in her head as she stood triumphantly in her crib, hands on her hips. I'll finally walk out of this stupid room. Getting Naka's eyes will be a hop, skip, and a jump away. She felt her legs tremble under her before she lost her footing, making her hold onto the wooden rail to catch herself. Or maybe just crawl. I can hop to my goals later. She nervously chuckled before closing her eyes, sensing if anyone was around. She felt a sense of pride that she could now sense the people around her more accurately through all of her practice. Itachi is not home and Makoto is nowhere near my room. Perfect. Humia opened her eyes and gleefully looked over the edge of her crib and at the tatami mat floor, rubbing her itchy gums together as she did it. Okay, Diana, it is not that far down. The crib only seems high. She thought before taking a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, Humia whispered to herself in English before lifting her leg over the ledge with her body, drool sliding out of her mouth. She held the railing as she reached for the floor with her toes, her hands slipping off from it after she dangled for a few seconds. Humia let out a gasp the moment her butt hit the floor. She quickly wiped her mouth and looked toward the partially opened bedroom door and sighed when she didn't hear any footsteps. She turned herself over and slowly crept out of her room and down the vacant hallway. She stopped at the stairs and grit her gums. Dang it, how could I forget the stairs? Humia, you escaped your crib. Makoto gasped from behind her, sounding unexpectedly jubilant. And now I've been caught. Curses. Why is it that I can only sense people when I close my eyes? She turned to her guardian and squealed with delight, knowing that Makoto loved to hear it. Face the wrath of my cuteness. How can my thoughtless baby self get into trouble? Humia let out the happiest laugh that she could muster as her guardian picked her up into her caring arms. Oh, little Humia. Stairs can be very dangerous, but Mama will protect you. Can you say Mama? Makoto asked as she walked down the stairs. Everyone knows that babies walk before they talk. I will not be some prodigy. That just screams early death. It is hard enough to understand Japanese when I only hear it in your sparse conversations. And you all speak so fast. Humia's mouth opened slightly as she stared into Makoto's expectant eyes, a feeling of guilt flashing through her. I must appease her at least. Humiya gave Makoto a slobbery kiss on the cheek before letting out loud giggles that permeated throughout the house. Makoto just gave a small smile in return. You will get it eventually, she chuckled as she reached the bottom of the stairs and walked past the entryway of the house. The moment that Makoto stepped into the living room, the front door behind them opened. I'm home, Itachi called as he came in. Welcome home, Makoto replied with a smile, quickly turning around to look at her son. How was training? Humiya waved happily at Itachi, making him smile a little. Her smile faltered when she noticed the purple bruises on his body and sweat dripping down his brow. You always look like you've just got the crap beaten out of you. You're already training to be a killer, but don't worry. I will be the perfect little sister. I will love that killing intent out of you. Well, Itachi voiced as he entered the living room. I finally hit the center of 3 targets at the same time with my kunai. Great job, Itachi. Makoto cooed before looking as if she remembered something. I have some errands to run. Will you be a good big brother and watch Humiya for a bit? Give her some mashed tomatoes while you are at it. It is just about lunchtime. Okay, Itachi replied lightly, his expression neutral. He reached his hands out to take Humiya, and Makoto happily obliged. Humiya wrapped her pudgy baby arms around Itachi as she was situated on his hip, knowing whatever request Makoto made Itachi extremely determined with the way his dark eyes sparkled. When will you be back? Itachi asked as he watched Makoto put on her sandals. Just in time for dinner. Your lunch is in the fridge. Wow, if only Makoto was a more attentive parent. Leaving your 4-year-old son to take care of his baby sister is a whole other level of wrong. Humiya sighed as Makoto closed the door behind her and looked up at Itachi. What am I going to do with you? Itachi clutched Humiya in his arms while he stared longingly at the front door before a distinct growl came from both of their stomachs, making him blink out of his thoughts. Rawr! Humiya yelled cheerfully, patting Itachi's tummy. Itachi couldn't help but let out a tiny laugh. It's time for lunch. Say, lunch. Lunch, he said as slow and articulate as he could. Humiya blinked her teardrop eyes at her brother as he patiently waited for a reply. I am not going to talk to you either until I successfully take my first steps. I'll give you a distraction kiss as well. She then let out a coo before kissing his nose, making Itachi back his head away with surprise. Itachi then walked into the kitchen with his bubbly little sister, looking disappointed. He then placed Humiya on one of the seat cushions on the low table before walking over to the fridge to get his plate of food and her tomato. I hate mashed tomatoes. She crossed her arms as Itachi retrieved a small bowl from the cabinet and began mashing the red fruit into a bloody mesh. Humiya kicked her legs up and down on the cushion and watched her brother take a spoonful of tomato and put it toward her mouth. She frowned at the mesh. Say ah, Itachi instructed as he brought the spoon to her mouth, smiling cutely at her sour expression. Why do the Uchiha love tomatoes so much? I am so done with them and nursing. She shuddered at the thought. Nursing? I have lost my love for food. Humiya would always be thankful for Amaterasu leaving her memories, but having her old life and this life be in so much clarity was as much of a blessing as a curse. Come on, Humiya. You have to eat. It's not so bad. See. Itachi took a bite and exaggeratedly rubbed his tummy as he swallowed the mush. Yum. Now it is your turn. He stirred the mashed tomatoes and scooped up a hearty helping of it to her. Ah. Humiya turned her head away from the spoon and toward Itachi's salad dish. Do you think you can manipulate me like that? I am not some stupid baby. I am an adult within a baby. Well, if you like that slop so much, I can just take some of your food. Humiya got up from her cushion as quickly as she could and snatched a slice of pork from Itachi's plate and put it in her mouth. No, my food, he cried, hastily putting down the bowl and jump on Humiya and to make her spit the food out. Come on, spit it out. You are going to choke. Humiya cried as she tried her best to chew on the sliver of meat with her toothless mouth. Get off me. This is the best thing I have ever had since I was born into this world. The tangy flavor of the sauce on the tender piece of pork kept Humiya's mouth glued shut while Itachi tried his best to pry her mouth open. It wasn't until Itachi used his strength to pinch Humiya's cheeks that she spit the food out. Ah! She cried as held her reddened cheeks. Bad Humiya. Stealing is wrong. Never do that again. Itachi scowled with a shaking finger after he cleaned up the chewed up pork. Worth it. But my cheeks are throbbing, you big meanie. Don't cry, me. Come on, it wasn't that hard. Humiya felt tears fill her eyes that didn't leave no matter how many times she tried to blink them away. Itachi's expression softened when tears started to fall from her big eyes. I didn't mean to pinch you that hard, Humiya. Please don't cry. You are too small to eat solid food. Why, you really could have choked and died. I'll make you something else. Something better than tomato puree. Hold on and don't touch my food. Itachi stammered, quickly getting up into the kitchen. Humiya watched Itachi leave, wiping the tears from her eyes, feeling bewildered. Where is that boy going? First, you pinch me silly and now you run away. I know that I took some of your food, but still. I was going to save this sweet potato for later, but I think you will like it better, Itachi told Humiya as he walked back into the room, mixing the warm bowl of mashed potatoes in his hand. Humiya looked down at the bowl with a sniff, feeling her stomach grumble at the smell. Looks good enough. But don't think I forgive you for pinching me like Hyoba-san. She opened her mouth and Itachi gently placed it into her mouth. Her eyes began to sparkle. Humiya cheered as she ate it, thinking that it tasted better than she thought. Itachi ruffled her dark brown hair that touched her shoulders and ate his food while he continued to feed her. After they finished their meal, he then cleaned up after them both and carried her to the living room, putting her down at one end of the room and situating himself on the other side. He then clapped his hands and ushered her to him. Come here, Humiya, come here, he beckoned as he continued his movements. Humiya just stared at Itachi as he called her over, debating on listening or turned to the partially opened door behind Itachi. I want to go outside. I might suck at escaping, but at least it is better than doing nothing. Screw this baby body and screw tomatoes more. Itachi's eyes glistened as he watched Humiya crawl towards him, his gestures becoming more animated. His expression shifted into one of confusion. He watched his little sister crawl around him and towards the door that leads outside and into the courtyard. Of course, he couldn't let Humiya have her way, so he swiftly grabbed her in his small but tough arms, his sister struggling desperately in his grip. Let me go. Let me go. She wiggled her pudgy legs and pointed at the door while letting out childish whines, her shame for how readily she gave into her baby emotions and desires long lost. Take me outside, she cried in English. Itachi held her close until she tired herself out, English words disregarded as gibberish. When Humiya was reduced to small whimpers and sniffs from newly formed tears, he turned his sister to face him. Humiya, whining like that will get you nowhere in life, Itachi fretted as he wiped Humiya's tears with his sleeve as she sniffed. He glanced at the now slightly ajar door, rocking his little sister. Let's take a walk. I'll take you to my favorite place. That will make you happy. Humiya couldn't stop herself from squealing as loud as she could the moment Itachi wrapped her up in a sling and stepped outside. She clapped her hands and flung them around in celebration while he walked her through the compound, summer heat kissing her face. Itachi ignored the glances of passers-by and their reactions to Hunaya's antics and wore a blank expression on his face. Humiya stared owlishly at familiar sights and enjoying the fresh air. No matter how many times she was taken outside, it felt as exciting as the first. The trees, the pulses, everything. She waved at the people who looked their way, overjoyed to see people other than her new family. A small part of her was worried about the tense atmosphere, but it was overpowered by the simple fact that she was outside. She closed her eyes to the wind that caressed her face and took a deep breath as it passed them by. They eventually left the village part of the district and walked down a wooded path. Humiya trembled at the unpredictable depths of the looming trees. Why are we going deeper into the woods? We could get killed or worse, kidnapped. Itachi, we need to go back. She thought with a whimper, tugging at his shirt. Itachi looked down at his sister, confused by the shift in mood. He rocked her a little, assessing the situation. She doesn't smell like anything, and she just ate. Is she thirsty? Itachi muttered as he took out a scroll, popping out a warm bottle of milk from it. Humiya gasped at the sudden smoke that emitted from the scroll, momentarily forgetting her sudden worries. She saw the bottle in her brother's hand, which made her feel very thirsty, and motioned to the bottle with her mouth open. Itachi happily put the bottle into her mouth before continuing down the forest path. A few moments later, he strayed from the path and went into the depths of the forest, dodging stray branches and roots with ease. Humiya couldn't voice her concerns due to the bottle in her mouth and resigned to her fate. The sound of rushing water echoed in Humiya's ears before Itachi entered the clearing. The water sounds came from a rampant river that flowed like no tomorrow at the bottom of a cliff where they resided, granite rocks glistening in its clear water. Waterfalls surrounded them and ran down towards its depths in front of them, trickles spraying in their faces, making Humiya shiver. The trees and mountain views along the river looked greener, leaves glistening as birds chirp. Did you bring me here just to cheer me up? She looked up at Itachi and felt an intense pang. The look on her brother's face was the complete opposite of what it would be in a few years if nothing changed. Itachi's eyes closed as he listened to the sounds of nature all around them, the sense of complete serenity encompassing his very being. Isn't it beautiful, Humiya? I found this place while wandering, he told his sister whimsically before looking down at her. I can stay here for Humiya, what's wrong? Humiya's dark eyes had fresh tears prickling at the edge of her eyes as she stared up at her brother. Ida Itachi, she wailed, hoping that she won't regret it. Itachi's eyes widened in shock at his name being called before revealing a childish grin. Yes, my name is Itachi. Say it again. Say Itachi. Itachi. He cheered as he wiped the tears off her face. I swear to help you make more happy memories. So much so that you never snap. Itachi, happy PYUI, Humiya stammered, hoping that she didn't botch what she wanted to tell him. Itachi jumped high in the air with glee. Yes, you said your first word and sentence on the same day. You're a genius, Humiya. A genius. I knew that talking to you would work. I can't wait to tell Mom. She will be ecstatic. I really hope Dad is home as well. He was so worried that you might be mute because you never called him Papa, and he didn't believe me when I told him that you were just waiting for the right time to speak, he rambled while rubbing his head against hers. I promise to take you here as much as I can and talk to you until you can talk even better than me. By the time Itachi and Humiya reached the front door of their home, Humiya's head was swirling with how much Itachi talked to her on the way there. She sighed as she looked up at the sky, the sun falling bringing forth the night, golden hour. Itachi burst into the house and ran toward the light of the kitchen until shouts erupting from the kitchen made him stop. Humiya flinched at the loud voices and felt two pulses blazing from there. Itachi slowly walked closer toward the kitchen, arms trembling as he held Humiya close. He then kneeled and peeked through the small opening in the open door. You are not taking our child into the battlefield with you. You can't. He is too young. Our baby is barely even 4 years old. Makoto cried as she slammed her hand on the counter, the liquid in the pot boiling next to her. The was is not looking good on our end and Itachi needs to learn the truth about life as a ninja. He can't run around believing that they are all heroes whose sole purpose is to protect the innocent, Fugaku replied, his voice evenly relentless. But that is exactly why Itachi needs to be protected within these walls. How are going to protect him out there with your hand full? Itachi has not even trained in the academy. I cannot stand by you on this. I cannot. What do the clan elders think of this lunacy? There was an attack within the village walls hours ago. Nowhere is safe. The elders have already agreed upon this decision and there is no changing it. The sooner Itachi gains the desperation to become the best he can be, the better. There was a moment of silence as Makoto turned around, lowering the heat of the soup and stirring it. Itachi, it is not appropriate to eavesdrop on our conversations. Enter, Fugaku ordered, turning his head toward the door and glaring into Itachi's eyes. I'm sorry, Itachi said immediately, entering the kitchen, his cheery demeanor replaced with one that was apprehensive. Give Humiya to me, Fugaku beckoned, uncrossing his arms to take Humiya out of Itachi's warm embrace and into his cold. Fugaku's eyes were deprived of any light mixed with his grave expression as if he wasn't completely present mentally. Even though her guardian was wearing his yukata with no blood and ash in sight, a hint of those smells perturbed into Humiya's nose, defiling the aroma of whatever Makoto was cooking. Tears formed in her eyes as pieces of the puzzle came together. What is going on here? Whatever it is, it has to stop. Humiya couldn't stop the tears that flowed from her eyes as she cried out, for that was all that she could do about the situation. Makoto didn't turn her head from the stove and continued to stir the contents in the pot as Humiya screamed to the high heavens. Itachi, clean yourself up and get ready for dinner, it is almost ready, she told him with an artificial calm, clutching the large spoon in her hand. And pack your things. We leave at dawn, Fugaku instructed, voice hoarse as he rocked Humiya. Fugaku, please. This. Fugaku sent a wrathful glare at his wife and they stared into each other's eyes for a second, as if they were having a conversation that no one but them would understand. Makoto looked down at her pot and stirred its contents solemnly in defeat. Makoto wiped her face with her hand and kept her face toward the pot. Itachi lifted his hand and looked like he was about to say something but stopped himself. Yes, Itachi whispered before following his Fugaku's instruction. Humiya rubbed her eyes before looking around her room, feeling the strain from her crying. I hate arguing, especially when my parents did and now they are too. She turned over to her side, her trembling hand brushing something softly knitted. Humiya hastily grabbed for it and held it close. Kai, she whispered as she took a whiff of the cat doll before chewing on its ear. Her small muscles relaxed and her hands stilled as the calming aroma of flowers with a lemony undertone filled her nose. This smells wonderful. I wonder where it comes from. She thought wearily, almost closing her eyes before a thought stopped her. Did Makoto make Itachi a comforting doll like this as well? Humiya pulled Kai away from her and stared at its black yarn body and touched the cold metal button eyes. Itachi needs this doll more than I do. Humiya looked around her darkroom. The stars twinkled faintly outside her window as if to take pity on her, for there was no moon to guide her. With her cat doll still in hand, she struggled herself up into a sitting position before closing her eyes, feeling the continuous channels that drifted throughout the house. Two large flames pulsed harmoniously together while a smaller one, farther away, pulsed like crazy. Good, no one is around. But Itachi's flame is concerning. Well Kai, time to put the plan, comfort Itachi, into action, she whispered to her doll, making Kai nod in reply. With this plan in mind, Humiya pulled her stubby legs over the ledge of her crib with as much uncoordinated grace as she could muster and flopped on the matted ground with Kai the doll landing next to her on its head. She winced when she hit the floor, rubbing her behind with a hiss. She quickly checked on the pulses to make sure she didn't catch anyone's attention. Itachi's flame was still erratic like it was on steroids while Makoto's and Fugaku's molded into one. This made her do a double take. Did Makoto's and Fugaku's flames just combine? Does this mean you know what? I'll just leave that be. Focus on the task at hand. Task at hand. Humiya shook her head while she crawled towards her giant bedroom door and huffed as she slowly stood up and grabbed the door. She felt thankful for the lightness of the material as she slid the door open, with relative ease, then crawling onto the cool dark wooden floors. Humiya scurried down the hallway and made it to Itachi's bedroom door, which was only a few doors down. She paused at the door and let out a sigh, feeling the muscles in her arms and legs ache. Screw this weak body, Humiya lamented as she slid the door open. A part of her regretted opening the door so quickly when she watched Itachi jump at the sound of the door opening. He turned hastily to the sound and his piercing black eyes softened when they made contact with her soft ones. Humiya bit her lip when she saw the assortment of weapons that surrounded her brothers with a sharpening stone right in front of him. You look like you are preparing for battle. Are you going on a long camping trip or something? Humiya forced herself to etch a smile across her face, sensing that something was off ever since their parents' argument. Ida, she cheered, crawling into the plain room towards her brother. Humiya, what are you doing here? Hungry? Bad dream? Itachi asked slowly, putting his weapons and bag out of her reach at the speed of light. Humiya tilted her head as she grasped at the Japanese words that she understood and morphed them into a sentence in her mind. Nah, she voiced, shaking her head and put her hands up in the universal sign of wanting to be held, Kai dangling in one hand. Big Ida. Itachi gave Humiya a sad smile before he walked over to pick her up. You were just lonely, he stated, his assumption not quite right. Now in Itachi's arms, she pushed Kai into his face making sniffing noises. He gently pushed the doll away, shoulders relaxing after the fragrance from the doll came into contact with his nose. Yes, Humiya, your doll smells good. Did you know that its smell is from the wood of the hinoki trees and lotus flowers? Itachi asked sweetly. Hinoki and lotus. Yes, hinoki and lotus. Good job. The green of the trees contrasts nicely with the pink flowers. They are grown at the Naka shrine. There is even a massive flower field near it. I'll show you after I come back from my adventure with Dad, he rambled to Humiya with strained optimism, slowly pacing around his room while doing a swaying motion like Fugaku did to put Humiya to sleep. She whimpered at that, cursing her lack of understanding. She leaned her head on his shoulder. No, she whispered, clutching his shirt and putting Kai under her nose. No go. Yes go. We never refuse Mom and Dad. Never, Itachi replied simply, now sitting on his bed with her tiny frame in his lap, his legs dangling off the edge. Humiya continued her whine, letting a few tears fall from her puppy dog eyes. Shish, don't cry. Sorry, Humiya. This is just how things are. I am sure that we will understand why when we are older. At least, that is what Mom always says when grown-up things confuse me, he told Humiya before letting out a yawn and rubbing his eyes cutely. Can't let her go. Itachi shook his head. If it makes you feel better, you can sleep with me tonight, he said, situating himself next to her and blowing out the dimly lit candle. Humiya turned to her side and watched her brother lay under the covers, face looking up at the blank ceiling before closing his eyes. She held her doll out to Itachi. Kai keep. He looked down at the doll and nodded before scooting close to wrap his arms around her and the doll like a child to a teddy bear before going to sleep. She felt the pulse of fire in his stomach slow as he breathed in the fragrance Kai emitted into the air until lulled to sleep. At least I successfully calmed him down. Humiya felt a pit in her stomach. She wanted to stay up as long as possible and relish in the peaceful moment they would have together but succumbed to the serene ambiance. When she awoke, she found herself back in her crib with Kai and Itachi gone. And in his absence, she wept. Not even the birds sang that morning. Weeks passed since that night with no sign of Itachi nor Fugaku. With every passing day, Humiya's worries increased. Humiya swung her legs over the ledge of the Ingawa that faced the tall fenced courtyard. With a sense of dread, Humiya noticed a few people pass by, their flames fearfully mourning with every step. Her family's chickens clucked while picking at the ground below her. Where did Fugaku and Itachi go for so long? They're not going to die, but are they in danger? Are they hurt? She moved her hand over eyes as a cloud glided through the sky to reveal the sun. Just looking up at the clear blue sky annoying. Its light beaming down on everything is so jarring. Bad things shouldn't be happening on good days like this. There you are, Humiya. Do you like watching the chickens play? Makoto cooed, picking up Humiya from behind. Humiya turned and looked at her guardian with a giggling smile, trying not to flinch at how the state of their family was taking a toll on her. Makoto's eyes were purplish, baggy, and sunken with her pale skin turned ash white. Her usual silky tresses were now scattered, oily strands webbed against her cheeks. Wherever they are, they need to hurry back. To make Makoto like this, it can be something as mundane as a camping trip. Please be okay, Itachi. Humiya replied, making Makoto smile and kiss her on the cheek. Humiya frowned at the sourness in Makoto's breath. We are going to visit your great-grandparents at the Naka shrine. Grandmother has been wanting to introduce you to your grandfather, Makoto hummed, swaying to the front door to put her sandals on. You no good. Can't go day. Humiya asked as she was carried out the door and onto the mostly deserted compound, dust fluttering in the warm breeze. Makoto only hummed and looked ahead, heedless of her daughter's question and the dirt caking her sandals as she dragged her feet. Humiya was about to ask again, but her head began to throb. She tried to cry out but her body went limp as her vision became disjointed. In her daze, her thoughts began to dwell on things other than what lay before her. Back her mind went, onto things she thought long forgotten, something from before emerged. Diana sweet. The best part is about to start. Get out of that little world of yours and enjoy our mother-daughter time. Mom, Humia called inside herself, her body going cold as she watched her form before her. She could see every freckle scattered across her pale skin with her light auburn curls puffed around her round face. She wore her usual floral dress that hung loosely against her slim frame. Humia's heart ached as she tried to reach out to touch her, but some force stopped her. She could only stare into her mom's hazelnut eyes. But I already know what happened in this play. Can't we watch a different one on the TV? I heard Cats is good. It's the one with the song, Memory, in it. You love that song. Humia found herself arguing as if this was another of their conversations about the play she was made to watch over and over when she was a little girl, her light brown hair in fishtail pigtails with bright ribbons and all. The trees swayed and the TV buzzed in her childhood home. Rays of sunshine shined in her eyes while the AC blared cool air from above. It was warm in Makoto's arms. It was warm on her mom's couch. Hogwash. Her mom boomed with laughter, giving Diamia her usual dimpled smile. Cats is just a play about cats doing mystical cat stuff. Better than watching fairytale fanfiction, Diana complained, not able to control herself, aching to hold her mom one last time. Her mom chuckled, caressing Diana's freckled cheek. You cheeky brat. You have to look past that. It is a play about life's challenges. One day, you will get hit with an unexpected life-changing event with no guarantee of success. You will thank me when the time comes and understand the wisdom this play sneaks in. But, it's my favorite song. Stop your complaining and sing it with me. We can watch Cats next time. But, there won't be the next time. Diana's mom began to sing along to the prologue song as the characters dimly danced along on the screen, moving up and down on the couch while moving her head side to side. She wrapped her arms tightly around Humia, beckoning for her to sing with her. The birds chirped around Humia as she heard her mom's voice flutter with the characters. She began to hum the tune, Tears Forming. That is a lovely song you are humming, Humia. I must be the luckiest mom in the world, Makoto cheered with a true smile, the skip in her step furthering Humia out of her painful haze. In the blazing light, her mom's voice quickly faded into her mind, her cool home leaving with her. Leaving her eyes burning, she rubbed them as fresh tears started to flow down her cheeks. Mom. Humia gasped with her baby hands reaching out for the fading vision she wished more than anything to be with, frantically looking around. Makoto ruefully smiled at her daughter, rocking her gently. Shish. It's okay, Humia. New places can be scary, but it's not always as it seems. This is the safest place for us, she told Humia before continuing into the clearing. Humia took deep breaths, trying to calm her questionable state of mind, wanting nothing more than to sleep off the void that was forming in her stomach. Mom, I still don't completely understand what you meant, but thank you. I miss you so much, she mourned, eyes still burning relentlessly. The dirt path quickly shifted to gray granite cobblestones as Humia and Makoto made their way closer to their destination. It soon came into view. The Naka shrine was a sight to behold. It reminded Humia of one of the Shinto shrines she saw in a documentary about Japan in her past life. The red and silver torii gleamed proudly with its Uchiha symbol towering above them. Hinoki trees surrounded the shrine with a whole forest of them behind it. Makoto walked up the stone steps to the gate and gave a customary bow to it, leaving Humia slightly bewildered. She took off her shoes before entering. In the distance, someone stood in front of the shrine's main building waiting for them, his flame seemingly non-existent. As they got closer to the building, Humia noticed that it was an elderly man in priestly deep red garb, embroidered with black lotuses, white hair combed up in his black hat. The weary man leaned heavily on his wooden cane and smiled kindly, his mouth contrasting against his deep frown lines on his saggy wrinkled face, making him look almost decrepit. Humia's dark eyes widened when she looked into his eyes. The priest's eyes contrasted with each other, one was a foggy white while the other a piercing black. Grandfather, Makoto greeted him with a bow. The elderly man's eyes flashed wide before he covered it up by smiling wider before waving his hands in distinct-looking signs. Sign language. Is my great-granddad deaf and blind in one eye? His life must be difficult, especially in this universe. Humiya stared up at him, which made the man rub her head and take her out of Makoto's arms. It has been a while. Where is grandmother? I need to talk to her, Makoto told her grandfather as she handed Humiya to him. Makoto's grandfather seemed to understand because he simply motioned for her to follow him before walking into the shrine, his cane echoing with each step. Makoto obeyed and entered the traditional-looking shrine. Humiya couldn't help but gape at the architecture inside. The walls were adorned with detailed art of an elegantly clothed Naka with many other spirits and gods, each making different poses with hand signs. On the ceiling, it depicted a story with a script she could not decipher, its writings familiar, but she couldn't figure out from where. In the center of the shrine was a painted statue of the Naka, looking nothing like the enraged goddess she made a deal with. Naka's obsidian hair was done up in a golden crown that looked like a halo with gem lotus flower pins. She wore a two-piece dress that had the signature loose turtleneck, revealing a jeweled necklace. The outfit she wore revealed her belly that had the same lotus as Humiya's birthmark. Her serene face had makeup on similar to Hyoba-san, the red of her lips and eyeliners vibrant on her white face. She cradled a black flame lovingly in her ringed hands, situated where chakra was centered, pulsing eerily like a heartbeat. Looking at the stature, Humiya knew that the Naka she met was the shadow of her previous self. A few people were kneeling before the flame, praying, and giving offerings. The black flame oddly didn't emit smoke when the fruits and flowers were thrown in, only disappeared within the flame with not even the scent remaining. Humiya frowned as she was taken away from the altar and down a hallway with many closed doors on the sides. So that is where I need to put her eyes once I find them. Makoto's grandfather slid one of the doors open and ushered Makoto inside. An office greeted them filled with different knick-knacks and books in the wooden shelves behind a low desk cluttered with scrolls, the room smelling like old wood and ink with a hint of lotus. Humiya marveled at the details of her great-grandmother's priestess robes, wondering how long it took to though they were the same colors as Makoto's grandfather, they were far more extravagant. The embroidery showcased a landscape even more mystical than the one Humiya was in now. Land of blood red, lotuses bloomed from below and up into the shining sun while crows were in mid-flight with some in the hinoki trees. On Hyoba-san's head seated a golden crown with jewels that formed into different flowers and leaves with a large crystal orb on the top. Oh, I didn't notice you all enter. It is so good to see you. Come and have a seat. Thank you for bringing them in, dear husband, Hyoba-san said in a wearily sweet voice, signing elegantly as she talked. I see that you brought little Humiya with you. She has grown up so much since I saw her. She went behind her desk and gracefully kneeled on the cushion and gestured for the others to do the same on the other side of it. Humiya whimpered as she stared up at her great-grandfather, feeling the flames of Makoto roar with intensity. She wondered how her great-grandparents could look so calm when her guardian's flame was trying to engulf them. Makoto's grandfather only closed his eyes and began to rock Humiya gently. No need for such formalities. We are family, after all. Now, why has my granddaughter come to me now after all this time? Hyoba-san asked, hands in her sleeves. Have you not read my letter? I want to start planning Humiya's initiation into the shrine hood. It is, never too early to. Do not try to mask it like usual. No avoiding it with me. Look at you, you're a mess. Have you been drinking? Hyoba-san leaned forward and tilted her head. It is about Itachi, isn't it? Humiya froze when she heard his name mentioned. Itachi. Why are they talking about him? Is he alright? Grandmother, please. I am fine and understand what happened. So please. I couldn't stop it, but the other elders agreed to Fugaku's request. I tried so hard to get him and the other children away from the battlefield, but the army needed as many hands as they could get for this war. The other elders refused to listen to reason. Please stop. Ninjas are being sent out to fight younger and younger, some barely out of diapers. Not even clan children are safe. Look at the Hatake. The only one left and graduated at 5 years old, too smart for his own good, and too devout for his own protection. His self-preservation was beaten out of him, dearie. Beaten out. We are killing off our future generations, and for what? Another war. In all the wars I have lived through, the children were protected while their elders went out to fight. Not like this. Not dying on the front lines. So many able civilian men are loitering about here while we are losing babies, sending them out to the slaughter to fill the gaps. It's asinine, dearie. Ludicrous. Hyoba-san cried, her straight back morphing into a slouch, looking more her age. I wish that we could finally have peace, at least for one generation. If only that prayer could be answered. If only. Grandmother. Makoto exploded, making everyone flinch. Please. She trembled as her Sharingan activated before sagging her shoulders in defeat. I know, but it is too late for me to do anything about it. I didn't come here to be reminded about what we can't control. I thought I knew of the sacrifices I had to make when I married Fugaku, but how could I have been so blind? Makoto sobbed, putting her head into her hands, to think my children have to sacrifice themselves this young. All for the sake of what? Peace. Humiya reached out her shaking hand to her Makoto and grabbed her shirt. I should have known. Something did happen to Itachi. Makoto turned toward her and wearily smiled down at her. Her great-grandfather put a hand on her shoulder after he handed Humiya to his granddaughter. Makoto snuggled Humiya close. Hyoba-san sat there in contemplative silence as she watched her granddaughter rock Humiya. Promise me one thing, grandmother. Hyoba-san pursed her lips. Yes. Anything for my only surviving granddaughter. Makoto smiled as she looked up at Hyoba-san, wiping a tear. That Humiya is the one who becomes a candidate to become a high priestess. Fugaku might force her to leave the shrine if she is to stay a shrine maiden and put her through a political marriage. At least with that stature, she can choose who she would be married to if she was to become a high priestess. Please, I can't save my son, but you can save my daughter, she begged as she bowed to her grandmother. Raise your head, child. I will do as you ask and more. Why, I will even train her myself when she is initiated, Hyoba-san resolved, getting up from her seat to go and lift Makoto up and caress her cheek. You don't need to worry about Humiya. She is sick but not dying. Humiya will do well as a high priestess. Thank you, Makoto whispered. Hyoba-san got up and went back to her desk. Now, I have to show you something, she told Makoto as she looked around her desk. Our great mother has been giving me visions. Visions of a place where true peace for our clan resides. She told them, opening an empty scroll on a clearing on her desk and pointed to a specific spot. Hyoba-san activated her Sharingan. It is the place where we originated. Our homeland. The place of the original eternal flame. After years of meditation, Naka showed me that the entrance is somewhere in this area. Makoto gasped when she looked at it while her grandfather watched from afar with his arms crossed. Grandmother. It will take years to get to, even at ninja speed. How will you go there when you are so frail? Frail? Hardly. Besides, I will reinstate the pilgrimages when this war ends. Uchiha were never meant to stay in one place for too long. Especially Uchiha of the shrine. Only we can spread Naka's blessings. But what about Humiya? She is so weak and tiny. She would not last a day. Makoto cried. Calm yourself. She might be weak now, but she will gain stamina with enough strength for travel. I am sure of it. She was blessed by the mark of Naka. And if she is not, I will have to ask someone else, Hyoba-san mused. While Hyoba-san was thinking, the doors to the office burst open. Everyone turned their heads to see a young shrine maiden jumping up and down before entering the room. Head Priestess Anisha, Canopy Bridge was successfully destroyed. The enemies are weakened. The war is now in our favor. The young maiden shouted, her pink flowing everywhere as she signed her words. There was a moment of silence. Humiya stared at the girl with her mouth agape. Oh, the maiden gasps before bowing apologetically. I didn't mean to interrupt anything. I'll just leave and tell others. Yua wait. Hyoba-san called, but Yua was already long gone, yelling as she went. Makoto's grandfather signed something to Hyoba-san. Yes, and maybe we will find peace, Hyoba-san replied, looking down at Humiya. But at what cost? Now for the overall edits. First off, I changed it so that Humiya had only read part 1 of Naruto in her past life. This is an especially important detail because it changes how she interacts with Itachi and Fugaku. She won't know about the real reason why the massacre happened nor about Indra. Shippuden aspects will still be in this fic though. Secondly, I decided after a lot of thought to change Amaterasu's name to Naka and altered her appearance. It is weird to be worshipping Amaterasu in the Naka shrine unless Naka was an underling of Amaterasu. I decided not to do that. Regarding her appearance, I found that she looked too much like Kagaya, so I changed it so that she only has 2 eyes which are both missing. Naka is blind. That is all. Happy reading. UWU. To Change Fate. Chapter 7. The Sick Return. Humiya squinted her eyes at the sun that shone radiantly down at her face. She scooted back into the shade under the waving branches the tree above provided. On her lap was a light buff chicken. She slowly petted its black and white feathers with a gentle hand and looked at the massive flower field near the Naka shrine. Makoto would not accept no for an answer when she told Humiya that they were going back to the shrine, no matter how much she begged. Instead, her guardian decided to bring Humiya's chicken, Tamago, with them. Humiya thought that it was stupid at first, but it worked to calm her nerves. She heard Makoto walking over, humming a little tune as she came closer. Humiya looked up at her smiling guardian and glanced down at the flowers she gathered in her hands before looking at the field that surrounded them. A sea of wildflowers of all kinds wafted in the breeze that brushed by its vivid colors of reds, pinks, and purples. The clear sky with its blazing sun made its brilliance shimmer bright on the summer day. But even with the beautiful view and soft feathers, Humiya's mind raged with thoughts of uncertainty. Not too far from the beautiful sight, the site of the Naka shrine gleamed tall. With it, thoughts of her future swirled to the forefront of her mind. Whatever gave Makoto relief that day did not lessen Humiya's sense of foreboding. Too much is going on. How many months has it been since I have heard from Fugaku and Itachi? 3, 4. Humiya turned to Makoto, who was now making a crown out of the flowers she picked, looking better than she had in weeks. She stared at her guardian's belly, hoping that what she drank in the past wouldn't affect him. And Sasuke is on the way. Fugaku, what the heck are you doing out there with Itachi? Making us worry so much. If you weren't gone, Makoto wouldn't have drank and I wouldn't have to be stuck here wondering how much damage has been done to both of my brothers. With frustration brewing, she wrapped her arms around the chicken that was half her size. As she held the chubby bird close, a sharp pain pierced her heart, causing her to silently hiss and hug the chicken tighter. And these chest pains, shouldn't the medicine Makoto's been giving me be relieving them? Humiya, if you squeeze the chicken any tighter, she will surely pop. Humiya jumped and turned her head to see Makoto look down at her with a fretful smile, clutching the crown she was making finished in her hands. Oh, Humiya replied dumbly as she looked down at the now struggling chicken in her grasp. Sorry, Tamago. Tamago clucked and pecked Humiya's hand in annoyance, making her jump and release the chicken, spitting out a few stray feathers that landed in her mouth. Luckily, the peck didn't break the skin. Humiya haphazardly whipped the rest off herself before wrapping her arms around her knees and laying her face down on them. While wallowing, Humiya felt something placed snugly on her head. She looked up at the petals that decorated her, its colorful assortment contrasting with her dark brown hair. Cheer up. Times have been tough, but the war is over, and your father and brother will be back any day now. Our days are going to be brighter. Humiya nodded slowly, her eyebrow knit in frustration. What's over? Senso. That godforsaken word. Mama. What's senso? Makoto bit her lip and looked away before flinching in surprise. A smile spread across her face. She gently cupped Humiya's cheeks, her eyes flashing red before pressing her daughter's face against the small bump on her belly. Can you feel it? Your sister is kicking. Makoto cheered, rubbing Humiya's head. Wait, but you. Shish. Don't you want to hear your baby sister? Humiya closed her eyes and sensed a small accumulating flame inside of Makoto's belly, its rhythm in sync with her guardian's. Not she. He. She muttered. He. Makoto chuckled. It would be nice for you to have a cute little sister, don't you think? Humiya shook her head. It boy. I sure. she insisted. Makoto chuckled before getting up from the shade. Do you want to help me pick more flowers? I am sure your father would love them. Really? Humiya perked up, perplexed. Likes flowers. Makoto bent over and put her finger over her lip. Just between you and me, your father adores flowers, especially sweet peas. I would make flower crowns for him all the time when we were younger and he looked just as good in them as you, she whispered with a wink. Humiya couldn't help but giggle as thoughts of Fugaku wearing a sweet pea crown in the flower field filled her mind. Like a flower girl at a wedding. Promise not tell, she giggled. There's my beautiful smile. Come on, I'll show you where they are. Makoto took Humiya by the hand and began to walk into the sea of petals, its depths parting with every step they took. Humiya felt more at ease with each step as pollen from the flowers caught onto her dress with the delightful aroma tickling her nose. She felt like she was floating, mind hazy with only thoughts of flowers. So beautiful. Wait, am I forgetting something? Ah, never mind. It will come back to me eventually. Then, in the middle of the field, a sharp pang stabbed her heart. Humiya shouted in agony, clutching her chest that felt like it was going to burst. Everything around went from a hazy bliss to a dark foggy hell. She could hardly discern Makoto's shouts from the ringing in her ears. Humiya, stay with me now. The pain throbbed more intensely with every movement made, she felt heavy with the feeling of being carried. She instinctively wrapped her arms around Makoto's neck. The trees passed her by in a blur, leaving her mind cloudy as well with her vision going black. The night sky was hazy, and the stars hardly twinkled in the sky. The only thing that illuminated the opaque sky was a full moon. Everything was silent, not even the fires that burned the buildings of Konoha made any noise. The place was empty, desolate, with no one in sight. Hello? Anyone there? Humiya shouted as she walked down the barren road, anxiety filling her with every step. The only reply was her echoes into the thick fog. As she walked further down the road, the only signs of life were what death left of it. Blood was splattered in all directions under the rubble. Humiya covered her mouth at the sight as the fog parted like the Red Sea, the smell of smoke mixing with burnt meat. By the second, more details of the scene became clear. Indecipherable bodies littered the village in tatters, stray limbs under rubble reaching out as if pleading for mercy. The desire to flee the sight engulfed her being, but no matter how much she tried to move, she was glued to the spot. Suddenly a roar erupted behind her, making Humiya cover her ears in fright. She looked up at the source of the cries to see the nine tails in all its wrathful glory, its murderous eyes staring through her. Its crimson fur burned her eyes as its tails whipped through the village with wreckage and screams in its wake. As one tail charged toward her, its name formed in her lips. Kyuubi. Humiya gasped as she hastily lifted herself up, grasping something soft as she went. She blinked and looked down at the IV inside of her arm. It was just a dream, but I am in the hospital again. I wish this all was a dream. What's a Kyuubi? Humiya's body froze before turning to see who asked the question. Itachi leaned forward in his seat next to her hospital bed when he addressed her, his eyebrows scrunched, and head tilted slightly to the side. He seemed to have grown an inch since she last saw him with his black hair now down to his chin. He wore a black loose short-sleeved turtleneck and shorts. His clothes did not hide the traumas he received from his time away. Humiya grimaced at the bandaged cheek and the bandages that went down his leg. The feeling of worry from his wounds mixed with the relief of his return filled Humiya to the brim, making her eyes water. She could tell that Itachi had been through a lot. Her hands began to tremble as she looked at his baggy eyes. Ida, where you been? Humiya cried before she opened her arms and flung herself onto him, making Itachi hastily wrap his arms around her. A part of her immediately regretted it as a wave of dizziness hit her, making it more like she fell into his arms instead of the initial hug. Careful, you shouldn't get up so fast. Especially with your condition, he lectured, gently holding onto her before placing her back onto her bed with the softness that belied his strength. Sorry, Humiya murmured, hunching and rubbing her fingers. Happy so. Missed you lots. It's okay, so don't be sorry. I am not mad at you. Just worried, Itachi stammered as he gently lifted the covers under her chin. I came right away after I found out you were back in the hospital. I thought you were starting to get better with how active you were before I left. Itachi began to run his calloused fingers through Humia's hair, soothing her oncoming headache. Humia leaned into Itachi's touch as she grabbed onto her blanket to put them up to cover her nose and mouth. Intrusive memories of her dad patting her head began to fill her mind. She could feel his large dark hands in a similar rhythm to her brother in her mind's eye, with his usual placid face showing a hint of concern which overlaid Itachi's. She smiled sadly at him. Humia. Why yes, she replied, blinking rapidly before glancing up at her brother. I must have worried you sick for being gone for so long. I should be the one who is sorry. Humia faced her brother, her cheek completely covered by her pillow, and looked at Itachi's guilty expression with a comforting smile. It's okay. You're back. Safe. Itachi nodded before looking as if he remembered something. Ah, you didn't answer my question. What is Kyuubi? He insisted. It must have given you quite a scare to make you wake up like that. Humia bit her lip. That's right, I said his name out loud. I can't tell him the full truth and I suck at lying. What a pickle. Evil fox sleep. Big evil fox. Bad, she whimpered, hoping that that was enough information. Ah, a nightmare demon, Itachi replied while nodding as if he knew exactly what Humia was talking about. I used to have one myself when I was younger. It was a giant crow with fangs that I had to defeat. They leave with time and never cause harm. Itachi slowed his head pats, his eyes going distant. His voice lowered as he continued with a humorless laugh. Funny enough, I would rather be fighting a giant fang crow than have the dreams that I have now. Humia was about to say something before he shook his head and quickened his slowed pace. Besides, nightmares are a part of sleeping and they never hurt you. So, don't worry, we will surely overcome them. Humia scrunched her brow at that, knowing full well that neither of them could control her dreams nor the tragedy soon to come. If only that were true. Nothing is going to prevent the Kyuubi from rampaging through the village. But I weak. Itachi paused his petting as if her words struck him. He then clenched his hand into a fist and lowered himself to her eye level, their foreheads touching. We are Uchiha, Humia, he stated simply. Father always says that our weakest are others' strongest. Even if you have your arms and legs cut off, even if you become blind and mute, you are still strong. Uchiha's strength does not lie in one person, it is shared, he stated before taking something out of his pant pocket. Humia looked to see that it was the stuffed cat, Kai. It looked as pristine as it was when she first gave it to Itachi. So, don't worry about it and focus on getting better. Leave the strength to me and Kai, he continued before placing the cat doll next to Humia with a comforting smile on his face. Now go to sleep, you should be resting. Humia looked between Kai and Itachi and gave her brother an encouraging smile. She snuggled herself into her covers, knowing perfectly well that she wasn't going to sleep anytime soon with the question swirling around in her head. Hey Ida, tell Trip. Tell. Why hurt? Humia asked hastily, clutching the ends of her soft blanket. Itachi's eyes widened at her questions and was silent for a moment. He then got up from his chair and tucked Humia in. I just went on an adventure with father and just got scratched up on the way back. It is no big deal. Humia's eyes flashed with frustration, making her puff out her cheeks. I wanna know. First. Mama no tell. Now you no tell. Don't like. She huffed. Why can't I get a straight answer from anyone? Humia glanced at Itachi and her expression softened at him as he rubbed the back of his neck in unease. I know that not knowing stuff can be troubling, but you will understand when you are older. Her frown deepened in response to his reply until an idea came to mind. Maybe I need to change my approach. Something is very wrong here and I will get to the bottom of it. Maybe I should ask about the definition of words instead. I might finally understand that one word that has been bugging me for months. No tell Trip. Tell words. No big words, right? Humia asked hesitantly. She felt anticipation bubble within her when she saw Itachi's shoulders relax. Of course, I can tell you the meanings of words. I know many of them and I can write them too, he replied lightly. Really? She squealed, leaning forward on her bed. Tell ninja is. Itachi put his hand under his chin in contemplation before a glint came into his eyes. Ninja are people trained in the ninja arts. They fight for their people's safety. Father is an amazing ninja and mother used to be one too before she had us. One day, I am going to become a ninja too and keep you safe. Cool. I won too. Humiya asked, her eyes like puppy dogs. Itachi's eyes darkened but quickly covered it. You don't have to be a ninja when I am. Besides, there are a lot of other things you can do, he insisted. Okay, she replied, trying her best to sound disappointed. Thought so. But I am sure to find a way to learn some ninjutsu. Now for the kicker. Tell me, what's senso? Humiya asked her brother carefully. A moment of silence passed between them as Itachi's relaxed shoulders tensed again with his face seemingly devoid of emotion. It's not something you should concern yourself with. Before Humiya could reply, there was a knock on the door. Is Humiya awake? Fugaku asked as he entered the room with Makoto closely beside him. Humiya turned to her guardians and hid her frown under her blanket. Like Itachi, Fugaku's loose robes did not hide the traumas of his trip. He was thinner than when she last saw him, and his skin was slightly tanned due to the constant sun exposure. Even though she could see the wariness in his eyes, his straight posture revealed none of his discomfort. Fugaku wore a stern frown on his face with a hint of worry by the scrunch of his eyebrows. Makoto smiled down at Itachi and Humiya, eyes teary. She went over to the pair and motioned Itachi over and rested a hand on his shoulder. Humiya, my baby, you will have to stay here for a few days. Seeing the tears in Makoto's eyes made Humiya's anger fuel her determination. I must get to the bottom of this and get better while doing it. Months went by and Humiya felt like she was going to pop with annoyance. After her solemn days in the hospital, there was nothing but celebration after celebration. There was nothing wrong with the celebrations in it of itself. In fact, she even got to see a glimpse of the fourth Hokage when he got inaugurated during one. What infuriated her was that the reasons were completely lost from her. What a ninja wants hidden stays hidden. That or I'm just stupid. Humiya grumbled as she turned the page of her book and stared intently at the illegible characters, a new pitiful pastime. The qualms of being illiterate. This book could have the answers to all my questions. Everything. She ran her small fingers down the page, caressing its slightly wrinkled edges. Why do things have to be so close yet so far? Humiya, stop playing with my cookbook and come here. Or a lousy cookbook. She sighed before getting up from her spot beside the window in the living room. Coming. Humiya walked over to the front door where an expectant Makoto was waiting. Her guardian's stomach was as big as a pumpkin and made her waddle instead of walk. On one hand she held a paper that looked like a list and rubbed her stomach with the other. Come along and be my little helper. I need a few things from the market, Makoto ushered as she slipped on her wooden sandals. Humiya nodded and quickly mirrored her guardian and followed her out the door. The summer day was bright and hot while Humiya walked down the dusty dirt road. She held her guardian's hand tightly as she walked toward the crowded open market. Aisles of stands lined the long, massive street, some covered by white tarps and others basking their products in the blazing sun. Merchants in colorful garb shouted over each other to usher curious customers to come to and from their stalls in organized chaos. In the heat, everyone's skin glistened with sweat that mixed with the sparking specks that sprinkled from the dry dirt road. Even though the colorful assortments of fruits and vegetables caught Humiya's eye as she passed, she wanted nothing more than to cover her ears and run to her peaceful home. Go home now, Humiya shouted, avoiding a rugged passerby leading a muscular black bull that was hauling a cart full of raging chickens, its hoofs almost stepping on her toes. Nonsense. We just got here. Now, here is the list. Can you tell me what we need from the it? Makoto asked before placing the paper into Humiya's hand. B but no read. Humiya whined before looking nervously at the grocery list. She realized why her guardian handed her illiterate self the list the moment she put her eyes on it. In addition to words and numbers, there were neat sketches of different perishables items that they needed. Oh, Humiya glanced at Makoto who had her eyebrow raised, waiting expectantly as they walked around the market. First carrots. Humiya squeaked before looking around for a stall piled with them. There. Oh, led us to them, Makoto cooed as she made Humiya weave through the crowd to where a cheery plump woman greeted them. Good afternoon, Humiya's guardian greeted in reply before looking down at Humiya, motioning her to do the same. Afternoon good, Humiya stammered, cheeks red from noticing her mistake. The stall clerk laughed before asking them how many carrots they would like. They both looked down at Humiya and she quickly answered. 5. 5. Great job, Humiya. My baby is so smart, Makoto cheered, making Humiya's pink cheeks deepen into a tomato red. Makoto then took out a scroll and swiftly popped the carrots into it after paying the stall owner what was due. They repeated the process as they went down the list, Humiya slowly getting used to the people and buttered up by Makoto's constant praises. When they neared the end of their list, Humiya felt an intense presence. Concerned, she looked at Makoto who was doing some small talk with the stall clerk. She closed her eyes and turned her head into the direction of the sensation, shocked at what she saw with her mind's eye. There were 3 flames in one body. The dominant one encompassed a much darker one while a smaller flame pulsed indifferently to it. She opened her eyes to see a beautiful woman with the longest red hair she had ever seen. The eerie woman looked too normal. She wore a dark green apron dress over her white shirt and had a cream reusable grocery bag hanging on her shoulder. Her back was to them until she was finished with whatever she was doing. The woman then revealed to Humiya her vibrant violet eyes and her soft face. Humiya, it is rude to stare, Makoto scowled, making Humiya flinch out of her stupor. Her guardian then took a gander at who Humiya was gazing at before her black eyes sparkled with familiarity. Kushina, is that you? Makoto cheerfully called, making Humiya's heart drop. Before she walked over, she stopped and winced in pain and gripped Humiya's hand before walking it off. Humiya looked up at her guardian with concern as she was led over to Kushina, who turned around at the sound of her name with a gleam in her eyes. Makoto, it's been a while, you know. And you're expecting, she squealed, motioning to her friend's stomach as she met up with the pair. Makoto nodded happily, rubbing her belly. Yes, I haven't seen you since your wedding. How is Lord Fourth? That long ago. Goodness, life just passes us by. Minato is fine. He fits the Hokage role well, Kushina replied with a hand on her cheek before looking down at Humiya. She kneeled to Humiya's level with her smile bright, making the small girl take a step back. And who is this? Humiya gripped Makoto's skirt and hid her face behind it nervously. She's the Hokage's wife. No wonder her presence is so big. And she must be pregnant due to all those flames. What do I do? What do I say? Makoto put her hand on Humiya's back and gently pushed her forward. This is Humiya, my second. Now Humiya, don't be shy. Say hello to Mrs. Namikaze. Humiya looked toward the intimidating Kushina, lifting her hand before immediately grabbing it down with the other. Bow instead of handshake. Bow instead of handshake. She gripped the hem of her dress to resist the urge before giving a deep bow. Aye Humiya. Pleasure, Mrs. Namikaze. She shouted, her face beet red from knowing she made more slips in her speech. Kushina looked like stars were emitting from her as she squealed in delight. She quickly put her hands on Humiya's shoulders and rubbed her cheek against hers. Ha! So cute. I wish I'll have such a good girl as you know. She cooed before looking into Humiya's eyes. But I kept my maiden's name, so call me Mrs. Uzumaki instead, or better yet, Auntie Kushina. Humiya stared at Kushina in shock, tongue-tied. She's Naruto's mother. Naruto is in her. But why is her stomach so flat? Isn't he due in a few months? Wait, the Nine Tails attack is happening in a few months. She's going to die. Overwhelmed, Humiya shrieked as she shook herself out of Kushina's arms and quickly hid herself behind Makoto's skirt. Oh, my apologies, Makoto sighed, putting a comforting hand on Humiya's trembling back. Humiya has never been good with strangers. There, dear. She is very frail, so she hardly goes out. Kushina stood up and put a hand over her mouth. Poor thing. I am so sorry. She turned to Humiya. I did not mean to scare you, you know. Humiya's eyes met Kushina's, feeling immense guilt about her behavior. She slowly let go of Makoto's skirt and walked up to her, clutching the hem of her dress. It okay, Auntie. Auntie's surprised me, Humiya stuttered, rubbing her foot into the dirt road. Ha! So cute, Kushina cooed, putting her hand out to touch Humiya but stopped herself. If you don't mind me asking, Makoto interjected. Why did you keep your maiden's name? I thought it was custom to take the husband's surname. It is, but I decided to keep my maiden's name, so that other Uzumaki will hear of me and be more willing to come here. Konoha will be a safe haven for Uzumaki descendants and have it be an official clan of Konoha. Really? That's great. When will it be official? Kushina's expression shifted from all smiles to a look of annoyance, crossing her arms. Sometime in early winter. The council is being way too difficult. Especially that Danzo. They're insistent on making it not a priority and go on and on about how the war just ended. It's been almost a year and reconstruction has been going smoother than anyone expected. Those elders need to calm down, you know. Before Makoto could reply, she leaned over and let out a surprised shout. Makoto, are you okay? Kushina cried, hastily grabbing Makoto's hand. I am fine. The strong contraction took me by surprise. I think it's time, Makoto huffed in reply, trying to straighten herself with Kushina's assistance. Humiya looked down at the small puddle forming under Makoto's feet. Auntie, water broke, she cried as she tugged at Kushina's green dress. Take Makoto to the hospital quickly. Ah, the hospital is miles away. Why does a village as big as this only have one hospital? It would be more likely for Sasuke to be born in the middle of the road than there at this point. Is there a clinic around here or something? Kushina's eyes widened at the puddle before an intense amount of energy emitted from her, making her hair split into 9 parts and whip around her rapidly. She snarled, make way. My friend's in labor, you know. Out of the way. The crowd surrounding them jumped at Kushina's cry with looks of terror. They rapidly tried to clear a path for them. Humiya shook at the negative energy but was able to hold her ground due to it not being directed at her. Don't you worry, Makoto, I will get you to the hospital in a jiffy. Kushina said soothingly. Too far. Humiya screamed, gripping Kushina's dress as she followed them in tow, help need. Kushina, Humiya is right. Smart girl. Ah. Makoto winced at another contraction, causing her to misstep and lean into her friend. The sweat slipping down her head caused her hair to stick to her face. At this rate, we won't make it to the hospital. I have a scroll full of supplies in case this happened. Those incompetent they told me I had another week. Just take me to a shady area and I will have my baby there, Makoto heaved, gritting her teeth as they moved forward. You mean in a dark alley or in the park somewhere? That's ludicrous. We just need to catch a ride, Kushina cried, panic creeping into her voice. Help, help, someone. Humiya shrieked into the crowd. Suddenly, a dark-haired trio swiftly appeared in front of them, all looking the same in their Uchiha police uniforms. Humiya realized that they looked so similar because they were triplets. We heard your cries. Please, let us take you to the hospital, the young officers offered in unison. Well, hurry up you three. A woman can't hold a baby in, you know. Kushina shouted, 1 foot forward in anticipation to push past them. Makoto weakly nodded to them and beckoned them to do what they needed to do. The 3 of them looked at each other before 2 of them put their hands together into hand signs. One of them shouted, transformation jutsu. A giant puff of smoke emitted from them both to reveal them gone with a hand-drawn wooden wagon in their place. Come on, the remaining officer ushered with an open hand. Kushina nodded before quickly helping Makoto and herself on. Humiya quickly followed. The officer grabbed onto the carriage and began to run as fast as he could to the hospital. Humiya felt dizzy watching the buildings zoom by with bursts of wind slapping her face, gripping onto the makeshift wagon's edge for dear life. She always thought that the road was smooth since she only walked the dirt road's powdery surface, but that was far from reality. Clutters of rocks were scattered across the road, causing the wagon to bump them often. Out of all the days, why did Sasuke want to come now? She winced as Makoto yelled in agony in her ears with every big bump, tears now streaming from her eyes. Why did Fugaku give in when I told him I wanted a 3rd child? Why did I want a 3rd child? She screamed at the top of her lungs. It's coming, damn it. It's ripping up my insides. Naka, have mercy. Get it out. Humiya grabbed onto her guardian's shoulder, but she hardly seemed to notice. We almost there. You okay? You okay? She said, trying to sound soothing. We are almost there, Makoto, Kushina comforted nervously, her hands on both Humiya and Makoto to prevent them from falling out of the cart. She flung her face toward the running officer, enraged. Hey, ride smoothing your big oaf. Can you see you are making Makoto feel worse? If Makoto's baby pops out from a bump in the road, you will deeply regret it, you know. She snarled, beating her foot on the wagon. My apologies, but please refrain from beating my brother or we will no longer have a wagon. The hospital is up ahead, the officer replied, taking a quick glance behind. Makoto let out another hurling scream, deep red seeping through her clothes. She quickly started to chant a string of indistinguishable prayers, eyes becoming distant as if in a trance. Kushina put her hand into Makoto's. Here's my hand. When you feel another contraction, just squeeze. The crunch from Kushina's hand mixed with the bumps made Humiya's stomach curdle, resulting in bile climbing up her throat. She struggled to lean outside the vehicle and emptied the contents out of her stomach, splattering an unsuspecting passerby's kimono. Sorry, she cried in between her dry heaving. When Humiya's nausea passed, the sight of the hospital made her shed tears of relief. Before the wagon came to a complete stop, Kushina scooped the wailing Makoto into her arms and ran into the hospital, leaving Humiya and the police officers to bite the dust. Quick! My friend needs care immediately, you know. She hollered as she held Makoto like a damsel in distress. Humiya watched the pair run in before struggling to get out of the wagon herself, her stomach hurting with a rancid taste in her mouth. She looked back with wide eyes when a set of long calloused hands grabbed her from behind. Another smooth job well done for us officers, right Tasuki? The policeman asked with an indifferent smile, letting Humiya's legs dangle due to him holding her by under her arms. Humiya heard a puff of smoke and turned to see the other officer wheezing with his hand on his knees, sweating profusely. Easy for you to say, Mikazuki. You are not the one almost out of chakra and covered in all this gross liquid. Tasuki replied with a heavy sigh, exasperated. Hey, don't blame me. You're the one who volunteered and insisted on showing off your transformation skills, Mikazuki replied bluntly. Besides, think of the awards we are going to get. I bet Shingitsu already alerted the boss and his son. After giving the boss's daughter to a nurse, I will alert the Lord Fourth and he will surely give us even more praise. What? Why? Didn't you know the woman with the boss's wife was Lord Fourth's wife? That is double promotion material. Humiya just leaned her head down, hanging limp in Mikazuki's hands, feeling heavy and her arms strained. I am so done with this day. What are you doing making that poor child hang like that? A woman in a nurse uniform demanded as she swaggered out of the hospital, her dirty blonde hair in a messy ponytail and baggy eyes a fiery hot pink. The police officers turned simultaneously at the nurse. Akatsuki, is that you? We haven't seen you since graduation, they said in unison. Yeah, now hand Humiya to me, she scowled before snatching her away from the two black-haired teens, making sure to hold the little girl the right way. There, little Humiya, I got you now. You remember me, right? Humiya paid no mind to the trio and just wearily blinked at them. How do you even know the boss's daughter's name? Tasuki asked. Zip it, and come on. You two need a change of clothes and your injuries checked, Akatsuki sighed, her back to them and walking back into the hospital. As the nurse walked into the hospital, Humiya's droopy eyes closed, lost to the world. And while she slept, the fox roared with rage in her dreams.